across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a very good evening to you. It is Wednesday the 5th already of March, and it is Petrie here with you through until 1 o'clock. And coming up at midnight, it is your chance to talk back, your chance to have your say and have your voices and your opinions and your views heard. So it's a whole hour, it's cleared out. There's no guests, there's just you and me. And something I want to talk to you about this tomorrow morning at midnight is about the benefit cuts that are coming, right? The government spent mostly really I want to talk about the sickness benefits, because last year the sickness benefit bill was £65 billion. That's for 1 year, and the projection is that if that continues at this rate, by the end of this Parliament, which is 4.5 long years away, it'll be £100 billion just on that sickness benefit, and it's not sustainable. We know it's not sustainable, but big cuts are coming. Now the big cuts are coming because Rachel Reeves has run out of fiscal headroom. The cost of borrowing for the government, not to be too boring, has just become too expensive, and people are not buying bonds because the yield is too big. So they're not, or the yield, they want a biggie so they can get more interest out of it, but we can't afford that extra interest. So something's got to give. Now, we're not going to be apparently taxed more, because she promised, a politician promised no more tax, no VAT. So she's cut off those big earners for herself. So the only thing she can do is to save money, because her fiscal headroom has run out. She had 9.9 billion. It's gone in sort of interest payments, is an easy way to put it. So she needs to find extra money. She has sworn that she will not borrow money against day-to-day spending. All right, so she'll only borrow money for huge infrastructure projects and things like that. So she won't borrow money just for day-to-day spending, and we've run out of day-to-day spending. There is no more. So this spring announcement, which she says is not a budget, because she said she'd only have one budget in the autumn, but it is a mini budget by any other means, she's got to find savings. So where do you go first? Do you go, I don't know, do you go and save money off big wasteful infrastructure projects, or do you go to the most vulnerable people in the country, and those on sickness benefits I would suggest probably are. Now there are people of course who are swinging the lead. I always say that, because otherwise you go, oh, you're so naive. I'm not naive. I do get it. I do understand that some people are lying, but a lot of people are not lying, and the reason they're on long-term sickness benefits is because they can't get to use the NHS, which, as we know, isn't working properly, right? So instead of making sure that works properly first and then cutting the benefits bill to say, well, look, you could have healthcare if you wanted it, you just don't want it, so you're a skiver, right? So that would be one way of doing it. But no, what we're going to find is that there's going to be a cut, probably to the tune of £5 billion. That is a lot of money. I know we're used to throwing around huge sums of money, and they start to become nothing to us. But I'm telling you, billions is a lot of money, and you're going to pay for it. So if you are on sickness benefit, I want to hear from you. I want to hear from you just how important your sickness benefit is to you. I want to learn from you about all the hoops that you have to jump through before you get your sickness benefit. But most importantly, I want to know, is there anything that Rachel Reeves can do, because it's supposed to be carrot and stick. I fear it's going to be more stick than carrot, to get you back into work. And I know we've had this conversation before, but now it's getting real, because now we know those cuts are coming. So give me a call and tell me your story. What led you to being on sickness benefits? How long have you been on them? How much do you rely on them? And what would happen if they were cut? 0344 499 1 thousand. And I will say, and I always say it, that there is an easy way for her to get money, and that is to tax the massive companies in this country a proper rate of tax and make sure they pay it. But that, of course, is too difficult, isn't it? Text the word talk and your message to 87222. Right, so that's coming up at midnight. For the rest of the programme, John Boothman is joining us from Bonnie, Scotland, to go through the newspapers for Thursday. We're also going to be talking to Andy Lowndes, my favourite spaceman, about some of the space stories that are around at the moment. And Lottie Hume, the delicious Lottie Hume, senior reporter at The Sun, will be here as well to take us through some showbiz and entertainment news. But first, back to that story. Rachel Reeves is preparing to make spending cuts as the Treasury is putting forward new proposals to the Office of Budget Responsibility. That was today they went forward, ahead of her spring budget later on this month. That is the Wednesday, the 26th of March. That's when we'll hear the details of what these cuts are and how they're going to affect you. The nearly 10 billion of fiscal space the Chancellor had left herself has gone. Like I said, that 9.9 billion, it's gone in interest payments. And several billion pounds of cuts are expected to affect the welfare budget, mostly that long-term sickness benefit. So we'll talk more about the numbers and the things like that a little bit later on in the programme at midnight. But joining me now to discuss this is Elliot Keck, who's head of campaigns at the Taxpayers Alliance. Elliot, thank you so much for joining me. Look, we can look at the budget, we can look at the cost of these benefits, and we see that they're going to go from 65 billion a year to around 100 billion at the end of this Parliament. All of us can see that is not sustainable, but what is the answer here without cutting people off?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's not sustainable, I'm afraid, and I understand the desire to be compassionate, but I'm afraid it's not compassionate to bankrupt the country. You know, the problem that we're talking about with the UK, which is this significant rise in incapacity and sickness and disability benefits, is a UK unique phenomenon. This is something that the Institute for Fiscal Studies themselves have acknowledged. No other country has seen this, or every other country pretty much has returned to the pre-pandemic normal. So I'm afraid that does suggest that unless we think there's something uniquely problematic about the health of Britons, I'm afraid that suggests that there's something wrong with the system and the incentive structure that it provides.
I mean, it has been suggested, hasn't it, by many people that it's too easy to get these benefits. It's too easy to stay on them. That there's a draw. There's a draw to say, if I don't want to work, I don't have to. Do you think that is the case?
I think there's a little bit of that. I think also we're making work more and more unaffordable for people. The tax rates have gone up through the roof. We obviously have an NHS that's on its knees, that probably is in a worse situation than other health services around the world. So, you know, I don't think it's just laziness. I think the problem is if you set people the wrong incentives, which is a very high tax rate if they go into work, if you don't give them access to the healthcare they need, and then you create a benefit system that maybe is a little too easy to claim benefits, people will just do what human nature will oblige. So, you know, I don't think this is about bashing skivers or anything like that. I think it's about looking at the system and the incentives. But
and invariably, though, Elliot, where there are cuts to this depth, there will be cases where the baby is thrown out with the bathwater. Right, and that is something that still, as the fifth richest country in the world, that we should guard against, shouldn't we?
Well, listen, no policy is perfect. That's always going to be the case, I'm afraid. Any major policy, there's always going to be edge cases. You know, I think on that, I think if you're looking to cut spending from the welfare budget, the first thing I'd go to is the amount that we lose in fraud and error. We lose about £10 billion every year in fraud and error in the benefits system. This is not money that is supposed to go to the individuals in question. This is money that's either gone to them because of a mistake by bureaucrats and by those responsible, or because they've been deliberately fraudulent. Now, that's £10 billion. I mean, if we're talking about, making cuts, that'd be the first thing to do. But we probably do need to look at a reform of the benefit system more broadly.
But this is the thing, isn't it? That it would appear that this government, and I will extend that to all governments really, appear to go for low-hanging fruit. They appear to go to those people who can't fight back, those people that there's already been the narrative about, look at these skivers, look at these bludgers, look at these, they're all faking it, they're just stealing my money. All of that. It's very shallow arguments about the benefit bill, but it's an easy hit for them. Look, I know they're going to go, look, for Labour, this is not what we want to do, but we have to do it anyway. But it will be a popular move by a lot of people who've been told that these are all skivers.
Yeah, and I think, a lot of people will look at the serious rise, in particular in disability benefits for young people, and probably look at young people with some contempt. And we have to remember, young people spent the 2 years of their lives unable to, essentially banned from socialising and restricted from education. It's not a surprise that young people are coming into the world of work and finding challenges. But the compassionate thing to do is not to create an incentive structure that incentivizes them staying out of work. The compassionate thing to do is ensure that they have the support to get into work. And I think, as you discussed, the state of the NHS is a national scandal. It's completely unacceptable. It's, I think, one of the reasons why we are unique in the world at not recovering from the pandemic. So, listen, that absolutely needs to be looked at, of course.
It is, though, when you're sitting and looking at the choices this government is making, right? The very odd choice to remove winter fuel payments to hundreds of thousands of old people, of pensioners, that this will just look like meanness. This will just look like, again, nastiness. And a lot of people are saying, why are we attacking, potentially the most vulnerable? Whilst acknowledging that perhaps people are swinging the lead, there will be a lot of people who genuinely have reasons why they can't be in the workplace right now. And we're not offering them, as you have said, and as I've said, an NHS that can help them in order to then say, well, look, you've had the help now, get back to work.
Yeah, and the winter fuel allowance is a really good example of this. I mean, everybody knows that there are very, very wealthy pensioners that don't need the £300, but to simply means test it based on the pension credit limit means that actually you're taking away winter fuel payments from, a pretty large section of pensioners that really don't actually have that much cash to spare. So, listen, we need to see what the details are, and obviously we need to guard against benefit changes that leads to a lot of people that do deserve help losing out from that help. But if we just look at the number of people in working age, claiming for, in particular, the number of people claiming for mental health benefits has soared to very disturbing levels. And again, this is not something we're seeing in other countries. Clearly, there is a problem in the way that the system is set up.
I mean, the parity, when parity was brought in between physical illness and mental illness, it was stable for a while, wasn't it? There wasn't this big rush to get mental health benefits. But that does seem to be, it was now completely overtaken physical ailments, is mental health ailments. What does that particularly tell us about this country? Is it just, some people would say it's easier to fake a mental health emergency. You can't fake a broken leg, or whatever, a car crash. So is it open to that sort of abuse that actually maybe it's more people than we think?
I think, listen, it is open to abuse. I think also we had a particularly hard and a particularly harsh COVID lockdown for young people. I think that's caused problems. I think we have a university system that's completely broken and that is not delivering for young people. Young people will take on a huge amount of debt for degrees that often don't lead to anything like the careers that they were hoping for, because they've not been given the actual necessary skills. So listen, there's a whole range of reasons. I think even, actually bluntly, British winters are pretty brutal. I mean, we only have daylight for 7-8 hours a day, and other countries don't have that. So listen, there's a whole range of reasons. I don't think there's anything uniquely problematic about the British people. Absolutely not. I think it's a mixture of government failure, circumstances, but clearly there does need to be change.
And looking at Labour, you've got cutting the winter fuel allowance, cutting foreign aid, and now cutting the benefit bill. It's not a great legacy, is it, for a Labour government? Although they have said Labour is in the title, it's about working for a living.
Well, yeah, and listen, they claim that their mission is growth. Well, in the latest quarter, we saw 0.1% growth, but in particular, we saw actually a fall in GDP per capita, which measures living standards, and that was the second quarter in a row that living standards had fallen. So essentially, we're in a personal recession. But listen, they do have some challenges. Obviously, there is a need to ramp up defence spending. That money needs to be found somewhere. But at the same time, you look at what they're doing, for example, with the Chagos Islands, where they're going to be paying billions of pounds to give over British territory. And, for all the problems that they may have, they aren't half, making it worse for themselves on a lot of issues.
They really are. Listen, as the Taxpayers Alliance, I know you look at everything. I'm a big fan of what you guys do. If you were in Rachel Reeves' kitten heels, whatever it is that she wears, what would you do right now? Is austerity the only direction she can go in, or would you be looking at maybe taxing companies like I mentioned in my talk up, those big, those hundreds of billions of profit that are taken out of the pockets of the people of this country? Would you be asking them to pay a bit more instead?
Well, I mean, listen, often these companies are making, these are global profits and, only their UK profits are really taxable, I think. Listen, I think public spending has grown by it's just an extraordinary amount over the last 10, 15 years. And, I'm afraid to say productivity has collapsed. So the NHS is 20% less productive than it was before the pandemic. If you keep on pumping money into a system without asking it to produce more for that cash, then you're going to have a problem. So if I'm Rachel Reeves, I'm afraid I'm saying to my ministers that until I see a significant improvement in output from their departments and their quangos and their public services, they're not going to get a penny more.
And they're looking to cut through the civil service as well, which is I understand has had the opposite effect, because everybody has now been promoted to a higher level that isn't in the redundancy firing line, and they're getting paid more for a job that they were doing at a lower rate. So they found a loophole there. But is it time to cut the civil service down, do you think, to do a doge?
Yeah, listen, I think we've added, I think it was 20,000 civil servants just in the last year alone. The increase since the size of the pandemic I think has been bigger than the size of the British standing army. We do have far too many civil servants. We know we have too many civil servants because the state is not being run better than it was 5 years ago when we had far fewer civil servants. I think there's too many people with not enough to do, inventing projects for themselves and then asking taxpayers to fund them.
Good to talk to you, Elliot. Thank you very much indeed. Elliot Keck there, head of campaigns at the Taxpayers Alliance. So that's what we're going to be talking about at midnight, is these cuts that are coming onto the benefits bill. It is unsustainable, but how do we fix it? And if you are on those benefits, what will you do without them? Give me a call, 0344 499 1000.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hi there, a very good evening to you. This is Talk, and it's Petrie here with you, as usual, until 1 o'clock. And as usual, at midnight, we have the phone in, and it's your voices that I want to hear. It's my favourite part of the show. It's when you and I get to talk things through. And what I want to talk to you about is these huge cuts in welfare spending that are coming. And I can't help but see this as again, another low-hanging fruit. Low-hanging fruit because it's an easy one, isn't it? We've all been filled with, images of people cheating the system. This woman here playing rugby, or that man there playing golf, and they've been on sickness benefit for 6 years, and they've lied about it. It's always those people that are in the papers. What we don't hear, and what I want to hear, is from those people who rely on these benefits, on this long-term sickness benefit. And the fact that, you look into some of the words that are being used by our parliamentarians, those people whose wages we pay. I mean, you could happily easily say they're on benefits, aren't they? We pay their wages. And they're saying that there are incentives in the welfare system, incentives that encourage gaming the system. What on earth are the incentives to be on benefits? Now, if you're somebody who's not on benefits, maybe you can give me a call and tell me what you think the incentives are. Look, I think possibly the biggest reason that people will stay on benefits for longer than they potentially need to is because of the predictability of getting that money. And the world of work is very unpredictable, isn't it? You could be working one day, you could be fired the next, right? So I can understand that. And also, if you've been on benefits for a long time, it's very difficult to come off them because you might fall down that pit. Your benefits are stopped, you haven't been paid yet, you get that month where you work in lieu of your wages, all of those things. And I think there is a potential now to creep that money forward a little bit. But look, there's a lot of reasons. I don't know whether it's people necessarily gaming the system, although there will be those out there that are doing it. But I do think it's possibly more to do with the fact that once you're on the benefit train and you're getting your rent paid and you're getting your, your council tax paid, and you're getting, free dental treatment or NHS dental treatment, or you're getting all these other little benefits that go along with the money that you get, that actually it becomes quite scary to get off them. And there will be a lot of people who are shouting at their radio at the moment going, oh, you're such a lefty. I'm just trying to put myself in the shoes of people whose shoes I've not walked in. I haven't been on benefits. So but I'm just trying to imagine that what it must be like once you're on benefits. And I don't necessarily believe that all of the people that are on benefits stay on them even when they could get off them because they're lazy. I think that it's more complex than that. I think that there are those, of course, who go, oh, I don't want to work, I'm never going to work a day in my life. Why should I? There are people like that. And I've spoken to them over the years on the radio shows that I've presented. And believe me, they get a right old roasting. But I do, as I get older, I understand that it's maybe a little bit more complex. And it's those complexities in which people live. Everything isn't just black or white. Everything isn't just us or them. Everything isn't just, well, if they didn't spend money on that group of people, there'd be more money for this group of people. I don't believe that's true. I've said it before. Governments are incredibly talented at wasting our money. And just because we've got more of it doesn't mean they'll stop wasting it. It doesn't mean that if we suddenly had billions of extra pounds, that people on benefits would get more money, or older people would get more money, or vulnerable groups would get more money. Because I've witnessed governments for decades now who, no matter how much money they've got, they have an enormous capacity for not spending it on the people of this country. And they have an enormous capacity for ignoring what people in this country actually want or need from the money we give them. They work for us. Hard to imagine, isn't it? I know. But I think it's more complex. So I'd like to hear from you if you are somebody who relies on these benefits and how you're going to feel, because these cuts are coming. And a lot of people go, well, it won't be me. We all think that, don't we? We all go, oh, it won't be me. It'll be other people that get their benefits cut. Well, this is specifically about cutting those long-term sickness benefits. Now, I don't know at this stage, because we haven't seen the OBR figures, I don't know if that is that everybody will take a little bit less, right? I don't know, because we've not seen the numbers. So will everybody who's on these long-term sickness benefits get a little bit less to give us this £5 billion? Or will there be certain people that are excluded from getting any benefits? Or will it just mean that it'll be so much harder to get these benefits in the future, that they will shut down avenues for people to be able to claim these benefits in the first place? So like I say, we don't know yet. We don't know how those cuts are coming, but the thing we do know, and for absolute certainty, they are coming. And in a way, they need to, because 65 billion to 100 billion in a few years, it is not sustainable. And as Elliot Keck just said, it's not right to bankrupt the country, the entire country. But how do we do this? How do we make sure that the most vulnerable people in this country get the money that they need to survive, whilst making sure that that is value for money for the taxpayer? And look, you can't run the country like a company. It doesn't work like that. You're seeing that in America, right, with Doge. They're trying to run it like a country, and they're cutting back all these absolutely vital and necessary things that don't make any money, but they are there for the people. And that's why people pay their taxes. That's why you and I pay our taxes, not so these MPs can waste it on another massive pay rise for themselves coming up. That'll be worth talking about in a couple of weeks. So, you know, or on some stupid, I don't know, building project. We need to look after the vulnerable. That's why we pay our taxes, right? And it's a safety net that's hopefully there if we should need it ourselves. So I want to hear from you, because we hear about the cheats, we hear about the liars, and we hear about the scammers. What we don't hear is from the people who need these benefits. And we need to hear your voice. 0344 499 1000, and you can also send me a message, please do, to 87222. If you put the word talk up front, it comes through to me in the studio.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a good evening to you. This is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. And coming up in the next sort of 15 minutes or so, we're heading off to space to speak to Andy Lound, and then we're heading to Scotland, a bit closer, to chat to John Boothman. But right now, it's the gorgeous Lottie Hume, senior reporter at The Sun. Lottie, how are you?
Hello, Petrie. I'm good. It's been a long time, I feel like. How are you?
It does. I have missed you. We haven't seen each other for ages. Now, Lottie, we'll start with this really strange story, because it's strange because we haven't got any answers yet, and that is Gene Hackman and what happened to him, his wife, and his dog.
Oh, I know, Petrie. It's a mystery, isn't it? And it's really, really sad. We had a bit of something's come up today that we reported on, and it's about a gas leak, and it's been found in Gene Hackman's mansion. But it was minuscule, and apparently it couldn't have killed the star, his wife, or his dog. So obviously Gene and his wife Betsy Arakawa were found dead last month alongside one of their beloved dogs. And following thorough investigation, the New Mexico Gas Company have said that they've made no significant findings of gas leaks or carbon monoxide in the home, but they did issue 5 red tags. So this was for a minor leak at the stove burner, and it registered 0.03% of gas in the air. But this is considered not to be a lethal amount. So they said the other 4 red tags were for code enforcement violations, not involving gas leaks or carbon monoxide, but involving a water heater and a gas log lighters installed in the fireplaces. So basically, we're no closer at the moment to finding out what happened to poor Gene, his wife, and his dog. And I do think it might take quite a long time to discover what actually happened.
It's so true, because I would have put money on it being carbon monoxide or something like that, because of because the dog was included in the bodies that were found. I mean, look, I hope they do. I hope we do find out, because he was such a sort of a major actor. Certainly for me, he's probably a bit old for you, Lottie, but you know, a brilliant performer, and I mean, he did live to a grand old age. I mean, 95, wasn't he?
He absolutely did. Yeah, it's such a mystery. Obviously, there's 2 other dogs, aren't there, who didn't die, and I think the whole thing has just been completely confusing for everyone involved. I mean, obviously, he was found in his mudroom. He had his cane and his sunglasses near his body, and then his wife Betsy was found elsewhere in the home. So yeah, like you said, hopefully we find out at some point what actually happened. But he is a brilliant actor. I have seen him in various different things, and what a life.
Yeah.
He was
just an extraordinary man. But it's so puzzling, because again, if it was a suicide pact, you'd imagine they'd be together.
Absolutely,
not in different rooms in the house. So it's so baffling.
I know. As a showbiz reporter, I don't think I've written or read about anything like this.
No.
Ever. You know, it's bizarre.
Yeah, no, it's bizarre. It's, you know, if it's younger, you might think it's drugs. If it's older, you think of a suicide pact or an accident like carbon monoxide. But those have been ruled out. So it's just
and the dog. So that
and the dog. Yeah. Exactly that. Look, let's turn now to the Brit Awards. So hundreds of Ofcom complaints after Sabrina Carpenter's sexy performance. What is wrong with people? Just switch it off if you don't like it.
I know. Well, this is the thing. But the problem is, Petrie, is obviously it's happened before the watershed. And that's why I think a lot of these complaints have happened. So Sabrina Carpenter is kind of the woman of the moment at the moment. She's a singer, and she appeared at the Brits, and she did the big opening, and she was in a very daring red lingerie ensemble. I think I remember watching it and thinking, wow, it was a lot. But, you know, she paid tribute to the nation with the Union Jack visuals, and she had the King's Guard, people dressed as the King's Guard. She performed all of her iconic songs, but the problem is it happened at 8:20. And so she's had loads and loads and loads of backlash, loads of people disapproving of the performance. I thought it was really fun. It was a great start to the show, but I think the problem is when it's before the watershed and kids are watching, you know, you obviously have that argument of, is it appropriate? And there were 800, as of today, it was reported today, 825 complaints have been made to Ofcom about that, but also about Charlie XCX, who was the singer who kind of won so many awards on the night. Her outfit, I mean, she was wearing a see-through black dress. You could see everything, and there was no bra there. And I think, you know, it got me thinking, from the Oscars, a lot of the events that have been going on at the moment, I don't know what the fashion is, but there's a lot of flesh on show.
Well, I'll tell you what the fashion is, Lottie. It's me, me, me. Let's see if I can get some attention. I mean, that's the fashion.
It's working.
You see, the thing is, when my boy was younger, and I mean, he wouldn't have been watching. I mean, I would have checked. It's the Brits. You know, you don't expect them all to be wearing outfits from Handmaid's Tale, right? I mean, you expect them to be a bit raunchy. And I might have pre-checked the programme before allowing my 7-year-old or my 12-year-old to watch it. I don't, and then parents are complaining about, or whoever's complaining about it. I just think it's just, we have become so annoying and we complain about everything.
We have. I don't think there is a single show that goes by that we don't write about now, where we're writing about multiple Ofcom complaints. You know, we've just had it with Britain's Got Talent. There was, you know, quite a scary guy that came on the show. Obviously, again, it's before the watershed. And again, so many Ofcom complaints. But it's like, the argument is obviously he's an act. And if you're sitting down for a family show, you kind of have to expect that, I guess that might happen on Britain's Got Talent, or the Brits.
I think that just people are sitting there waiting to be offended.
Waiting, yeah.
They just go, oh, good, I'm offended, and then complain about it. And it's just, it's so simple. You know, I had somebody the other day threaten to Ofcom me because I said I didn't like Donald Trump. And it's like,
oh my goodness.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, go on then, give Ofcom a laugh.
Absolutely.
Because it's not an Ofcomable offence to have an opinion, you monkey. So, honestly, people just want so desperately to be offended by something. And for me, if I don't like something or I don't like somebody, I don't go there. I don't watch it, or I don't listen to it, or I don't eat it. You know,
or you turn it off, like you said.
There's an off button. Use it, right? Nobody's going to be offended. Let's have a look at the Oscars party, though. This I would have gone.
I know, I would have gone with you. This is shocking, isn't it?
Yeah. So give me the details on this.
So Oscars parties, believe it or not, they were a total flop this year. Less than 30% of guests showed up. Over $700,000 of food, like champagne, lobster, caviar, which sounds delicious.
I love caviar.
Absolutely, but it was all wasted. You would have had a field day there because there was so much left over. So obviously with the Oscars, it's the most glam night of the year, you know it is, and we have all the A-listers partying until early hours. That's what it's always been known for, as well as the award ceremony. But you know, we had Demi Moore. She didn't win her Oscar, which I think she thought she might have done, but she ended up just going home, eating some chips, putting a photo on social media, and you know, Hollywood sources have said their budgets were smaller, so there were more intimate parties going on. But so one media personality attends all the Oscars parties every year, and they said it is the quietest that Hollywood has ever been during the Oscars season. They said that 9 out of 10 sponsors pulled out of one of the gifting lounges. They said that, you know, the parties were over by midnight, and you know, the stars were just kind of taking pictures with fans and going straight home. But just to look at some of the food wastage, so they said 30% of the guests didn't turn up, so there was, you know, no one to enjoy the champagne and the cognac, and $700,000 was splurged on food, much of it left uneaten. So this included 150 pounds of lobster, which was $50,000, huge amounts of caviar, which set organisers back $180,000, and it all just sat there. And they had $11,000 worth of Remy Martin cognac, and they only opened one bottle. And I think the good thing they said was, you know, all the workers that night, the people that were working, left their shift with huge bags of food, a huge smile on their face.
Yeah, the doggy bags that you could have taken home. I know. Yeah. I have solved this mystery, by the way, Lottie.
Go on.
Why they didn't go and eat the food and drink the drink? Because they're all on Ozempic.
Oh, why did I think of that? I should have thought of that.
You don't have an appetite.
You don't have an appetite.
And it puts you off alcohol as well for some people.
Petrie, that would explain so
That's
much.
exactly what it was. That is it, solved.
It is solved. Because why else would it be? This is the time when that's everything. We're talking about that constantly, aren't we? And they're saying that in the first time in 25 years, one of the organisers has said no one's been there, no one's turned up, everyone's gone home.
That's why. Because they were, I mean, and everybody talked about how skinny the women were and how they're all on these weight loss drugs.
Yeah.
They're not going to go to a party, are they, and eat food?
No, when they could just go to bed.
Yeah.
Or put a picture on social media eating some chips.
Or pretending to eat some chips. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, that's that solved. That's that mystery. So at least we've solved one of the mysteries going around at the moment.
Exactly.
A Coronation Street legend is returning after retiring from acting. So who's this and why?
So Ryan Thomas is returning to the show. Now, I grew up watching Coronation Street, and I remember him. Yeah, and he was a brilliant character on the show. He obviously kind of quit the show because, do you know what? He just fell out of love with acting. So he plays Jason Grimshaw on Coronation Street. And the reason he's agreed to return is to give his on-screen mum, Sue Cleaver, who is Eileen Grimshaw, if my memory serves me right, she is leaving. So it's a bit of a fitting send-off for Eileen. And it's the end of an era. Obviously, we saw Gail Platt, Helen Worth go not too long ago, and now Eileen. So someone said, it's a no-brainer for Ryan to return when he's asked. It's all for Sue because she's like a second mum to him, and he wanted to do anything he could to make her send off as special as possible. But he was last on the show in 2016. He's been mentioned frequently. He wasn't killed off, obviously, and he stayed for 16 years. So I think he went to Thailand. So obviously they can bring him back quite easily. But
what's he been doing in the real world? Do we know?
He's been doing so much. He was on Celeb Big Brother. He was on Dancing on Ice. I think he was crowned champion of that last year. He's obviously got his two very famous brothers as well. One was in Emmerdale. The other one was on Love Island. So they're a bit of a trio, and they're quite well known on social media, but also building a family. So it will be great to see him back. He said he just really, really became so disillusioned with acting after Corrie and fell out of love with it, essentially. So it'll be nice to see him back on screen. 16
years, I suppose, of playing the same character. And just quickly, we can't leave without talking about this. Talk about being on screen playing a character. Meghan Markle's new show.
I love that.
It's not done that well, has it?
It really hasn't. And actually, before coming to chat to you tonight, I was just taking a look, and it's got 11% on Rotten Tomatoes. Meghan Markle's new Netflix show, which is called With Love, Meghan. It's not receiving any love, sadly, for Meghan. So 11% on Rotten Tomatoes really, really isn't good. It's falling behind wrestling, sitcoms, things like that. Just to recap, it's about Meghan starring in 8 episodes. It's a bit of a cookery show. She shows off tips. It's filmed in her in a kitchen she rented, which is £5 million near their Montecito mansion. It's just unrelatable, Petrie. I have to say, I watched an episode yesterday, and the people that it's annoying the most are working mums, because she's saying things like, make your kids a little party bag and fill it with this, that and the other, gardening tools, sugar snap peas, sweet basil. A lot of the things she's doing on there, it's not that they're not brilliant ideas, but no one has the time. It's ridiculous. They're really
Can you imagine handing a bunch of kids a party bag with seeds and a sugar snap peas in it? I know exactly. You'd be even 4-year-olds. They'd be mugging you on the way home. It's not relatable. Good luck to her. I think they're going to need it, but I won't be watching it. Lottie, you're wonderful. Thank you very much indeed. Lottie Hume, there, senior reporter at The Sun.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a very good evening to you. It is Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. Coming up at the top of the hour, we have John Boothman joining us from Scotland. But first of all, I don't know where in the universe Andy Lound is, but I will find out in just a moment. Andy Lound, my favourite space expert, where are you?
Hi, I'm on the moon, exactly where Firefly has landed. You can see me, so if I move away...
Oh, yeah.
That's the Earthrise on the moon.
That's amazing. Let's talk about that first of all. Talk to me about being on the moon. This is a private company again, is it?
Yes, it is. This is Blue Ghost by the company called Firefly. I'm a great name. We're getting decent names now for stuff, which is good. This is part of the Artemis program where NASA have actually put tenders out for organizations, private companies, to send spacecraft to the moon. And what the private companies have is they design a lander vehicle, and then NASA can actually put instrumentation on top of it, and they send it to the moon, lands on the moon, and then they can carry out their experiments. So if you like, it's sort of hiring a bus almost, if you like, but it's a moon lander. And this has been a very, very, very successful mission so far. It took off towards the moon, went into orbit, and then a spectacular landing in the Sea of Crises, which is quite suitable for these days, perhaps. A nice smooth area for it to start carrying out some very important research, preparing astronauts to go to the moon. Of the experiment, checking for the radiation environment. This is really critical because radiation is probably the biggest threat to astronauts when they go to the moon. So I'll be checking the radiation environment there. An interesting experiment will be carried out to actually use a small vacuum cleaner to suck up the lunar regolith, which is the dust with bits of rocks and things like that, and to do some testing on that material, because there's a big issue regarding the dust on the moon. If people decide to do their research and have a look at images, video and still images of the Apollo 17 mission. Now, the last human mission to the moon was Apollo 17, and they took with them a geologist, a scientist to the moon, and with the other crew member, they dug up, they scraped, they did everything on the dirt, and were absolutely caked in grey because their spacesuits were white and they were covered in grey. Now, this wasn't simply the material just flown up and holds onto your material like it would if it was wet or something like that. This actually is electrostatic, so it actually physically stuck in a similar way that if you open your big wonderful parcels that you get and you have all those polystyrene bits fall off, and start sticking to you. That's exactly what the moon dust does to your uniforms, but also it sticks to other materials such as the spacecraft, electronics. So it could be quite dangerous. So they're trying to actually analyze the material to see if there's what type of material this will stick to. Is there any material it won't stick to? And possibly look at ways of stopping that material sticking. They're already going to test one of the spacesuits out, which puts a minor electrical charge through it, very, very light, in order to repel the dust from the suits. That's one suggestion. Honestly,
I was just going to. I literally promise you, I was about to say, why can't they make it slightly electronic so that would repel it?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Good physics. Yeah, well done. That's exactly what the type of solutions you need. The other dangerous thing about this lunar dust is also it's very, very, very fine. But when you put it under a microscope, it's actually spiky. So if you were to breathe it in, and some of the astronauts did do this when they were in the lunar module because they were exposed to it, it got into their bronchial tubes and into their lungs, and it gave them almost like a reaction to it, very similar to pollen reaction, if you like, where some astronauts might hardly touched it, but some were very ill. They had running noses, they were coughing a lot. It cleared up quite happily, but if you're going to have durations on the moon where you're living there for months and you've got this material coming in and out of the spacecraft, it could be quite dangerous. So they're trying to have a look at ways of negating that. And this mission is going to be really, really important to do that. Another experiment it's doing for that, it's going to be on the moon for 14 days. And a big event is actually happening on March the 14th, Friday, in the early hours of the morning. We've got a total lunar eclipse. You'll be able to see it from Britain by going out into your garden. But they're going to observe it from the moon. But this spacecraft is going to photograph the lunar eclipse. And that's going to be fantastic. And then eventually, when it gets to after 14 days, which is the equivalent of one lunar day, the sun will actually set. And what it's going to do is then just photograph the sun rising. Now it's going to photograph the sun setting. And when it does, it's going to look for the way the dusty material rises slightly over the surface, because you actually get the dusty materials rising and scattering light. This was observed by an astronaut on Apollo 17 mission when he was completely dumbfounded by it, when he was explaining they could see lights. And on some spacecraft missions that were done in the 1960s, one of the surveyors photographed the horizon of the moon and said they could see these strange lights. Now, as you can imagine what the UFO community was like on this one, oh, it's aliens. But they actually find it's dust rising, partly due to these electrostatic effects and partly due to heat from the sun. And they tend to move around and scatter light. So they really do want to observe that and find out what sort of a risk there would be to astronauts and to spacecraft with this material.
That's amazing. So they're there really a really opportune time. Was it planned that they would be there during all these things?
This happens constantly on the moon. This is a constant thing that happens on the moon, and that's why it needs to be studied very carefully, because what you don't want is this material flying around and risking the lives of astronauts or equipment. Of course, you don't want dust getting into equipment. I mean, you know what happens. I mean, on Earth, we have the wrong type of snow. I mean, people used to joke about that, but actually it was quite sensible, because the type of grills that we had on trains, for instance, was designed for the size of ice particles that we have in Britain. And what you actually ended up with an Arctic blast, which had tinier particles, which got straight through and started to attack the equipment. So the word wrong type of snow was perhaps bad English, but there was actually a good technical reason for that. And you have these issues on Earth, and you have it with sand, for instance, blowing by helicopters when they went into Desert Storm and things like that. They had special filters mounted. Well, it's the same issues we have now on the moon.
It's really, really fascinating. When is it coming back?
It's not. It stays where it is, and will actually
we just get the information back.
It transmits the data back directly to the Earth. It's a robotic vehicle.
So we should get it quite quickly.
Oh, data's coming back all the time. In fact, they were quite surprised that when he went into lunar orbit, they were getting the pictures back, and the pictures were far better than they anticipated. And you go online and have a look at them. Unbelievable. You can see the moon racing underneath them as the spacecraft flies over the moon. Wow. It's absolute fantastic imagery they've got. It's been far more successful than they expected, I think. It's one of these things that has just worked extremely well. Yeah.
Unlike SpaceX, they've had to call off another launch.
Oh, it's a shame. Yeah, they've had to. Interesting. I was at a hydrogen conference today, and I was speaking to guys who make gaskets. Now, everyone's going, oh, what's he talking about gaskets for? Yeah, because hydrogen, of course, being a very small atom, no matter how you try to seal something, it'll seep through. And they're trying to make gaskets to protect it. And that's some of the problems that SpaceX, for instance, have, and vehicles like that with issues. So there's a lot of issues to actually solve with these vehicles. So it's a bit sad, but there's going to be 25 launches this year of SpaceX at some point during the testing. 25 to get it up and running.
And I want to just quickly talk to you about SpaceX, which of course is an Elon Musk company. There's a lot of people now cancelling their contracts with SpaceX for reasons that they don't like his politics or his interfering in politics in Europe and around the world. How much of an impact will that have on him? I mean, Canada is looking to cancel all those. I believe 7 European countries have done the same. And where will they go? I mean, just briefly, because I've been fascinated about this. Will they go to China for launches?
Not really. I think cancelling with SpaceX is ridiculous. I mean, what they're doing is they're being very petulant doing this. Although Elon Musk runs the company, the people who are actually operating at SpaceX itself are people who happen to work for a company who the CEO just happens to be Elon Musk. Yeah, if you started doing that with all companies, then nobody would actually get anything done in the world. I don't happen to agree with a lot of comments that were made, for instance, by the head of JCB. I didn't like that very much because I think they were being wrong in some of their comments. Does that mean to say I wouldn't use a JCB digger to do any work? They're just being silly. You've got to be realistic, and I think the danger is here of politics creeping into this is really, really dangerous. I mean, Elon Musk, whatever, okay, he goes off on a tangent doing other things, but that's what he does. I think making that affect SpaceX is a dangerous thing to do, and it will only damage long-term space exploration, and it'll actually damage the economy overall, because it'll damage the engineering of being able to do such wonderful things. I think it's really silly and petulant, but it just goes to show how petulant politicians can be.
And you've always said that space, like sport, should be outside of politics, that it's a global effort, and you and I have agreed on that many times. Andy, wonderful to talk to you, and even better to see you. Thank you. Enjoy your time on the moon. Right, back down to earth now. And coming up, we're going to be chatting with John Boothman, Esquire, who is currently in Scotland. See you then.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello. Fantastic to have your company, and for the next hour we are in the company of the wonderful John Boothman, a political correspondent at the Sunday Times in Scotland. Hello there, John. Marvellous to see you. Thank you for joining me.
That's okay. I'm in Glasgow tonight and not in Edinburgh, which is very unusual.
Why? What are you doing in Glasgow?
I've got some meetings tomorrow, but I've come and stayed with my daughter tonight.
Oh, how nice for you. Is it nice for her? Is she pleased to see you?
Yeah, splendid. Yeah, really nice.
Bless her. Listen, before we get into the papers, there's a couple of things I want to talk to you about. First of all, there's just been some breaking news. And it's the White House has confirmed that US officials have held direct talks with Hamas. Well, President Trump has warned the group to hand over Israeli hostages or you are dead. Now, this is interesting because Hamas is a proscribed terrorist group, and the America, as the UK, do not do deals with terrorists. That was prescribed in 1997.
That's very old money. Petrie, given what's happened in the last couple of weeks.
Listen, I know,
the world's
I know.
been turned upside down.
I know.
You know, the very thought that you've just articulated was going through my mind. It was like, wasn't there a time that we didn't talk to
We didn't
terrorists?
do that, yeah.
No.
Ah.
So
We're having
fascinating.
cosy chats with Putin now, so I mean, all bets are off, aren't they?
Well, maybe so far from what you've said, you know, it's less talk so far and, well, more, you know, Donald Trump and his people shouting down a megaphone at Hamas and telling them that unless you do what we want you to do, which is hand back the hostages, which, to be fair, hostages and the bodies of dead hostages, Trump has been saying for a long time. I think I've heard this, you know, ultimatum before.
Yeah, we have.
You know, it's a very strange place that we live in. I don't know. You know, I feel as if I've been around the block and all this stuff for a very long time, but it's very, very difficult for people, ordinary people, journalists, commentators, everybody to comprehend. You find yourself waking up in the morning and scratching your head. And the other thought that I have, certainly in terms of what's happening in the European theatre, for want of a better description, is, you know, we have a mixture of fascination and sort of horror and maybe a wee bit of fear round about this stuff. You know, what about all those people who live in Finland and Poland and Lithuania and Estonia and Latvia and, you know, Moldova and Georgia and anybody who happens to have any proximity to Russia, where who would ever have thought? And this is the language that we are now hearing all the time about this, that the Americans have changed sides. Who would ever have thought, John, you would ever in our lifetime hear that kind of language from, you know, esteemed academics, former ambassadors, people who are diplomats, and that's the way they are talking.
I mean, it is. I mean, like you, I've been around a while and been around a few blocks myself, and this is just head spinning stuff at the moment. I mean, I literally every morning I wake up and I just with one eye covered, you know, look and see what the latest is, and it's always something entirely unpredictable. I switched my phone off on Friday afternoon just for a couple of hours because I wasn't working and I was helping my son move flats. So I just thought, you know, I'll spend a bit of quality time with my boy. And by the time I switched it back on about 2.5 hours later, the whole world had turned upside down after that Oval Office meeting. I daren't switch my phone off now. I'm constantly on it. I'm constantly catching up with, because everything changes in a heartbeat. And when you think it's changed in one direction, it will then change in another direction in a blink of an eye.
I mean, my sad admission of the evening is that, having seen my daughter and come here to Glasgow, we actually watched an episode of The West Wing because kind of things were quite good there when we had a different kind of president. But it was a real antidote to seeing what I'm seeing in real life on the telly.
I'm honestly, I'm absolute. This new world order is forming before our eyes, and I don't quite know what to make of it. You know, unpredictability has always been vaguely predictable. It isn't anymore. Yeah. It isn't anymore. Right. The other thing I wanted to ask you about, just before we get to the papers, is these budget cuts that are coming from Rachel Reeves. And I know that Scotland will have a slightly different budgeting for benefits and things like that because of your devolved parliament. But just looking at the cuts that this Labour government is now anticipating on bringing forth onto, again, the most vulnerable people in society, it's looking like cutting £5 billion, which is a heck of a lot of money, off the welfare bill, and they will say we regretfully have to do this as a Labour government, but what do you make of that?
Again, this is a consequence of what we're seeing. If we're going to go, and I think I saw this in one of the papers, tomorrow's papers already, if we're going to go from a welfare economy to prepare for a warfare economy, then somehow or other that's got to be paid for. If your country is not doing very well in the economic front growth, and we've had plenty of that from Rachel Reeves in the last, since last July, since they won the election, then, the money's got to be found. And what we're talking about, and what we appear to be talking about, are pretty huge cuts to disability benefits, welfare benefits. Somebody described it to their eligibility and generosity, i.e., taking away quite a lot of support from pretty vulnerable people. Now, it's definitely the case that there has been an issue post-COVID, in reality, with the numbers of people who are claiming disability and incapacity benefits. We hear more and more of people who have got mental health issues and people not being available to work in age groups where previously they would have been eligible to work. And that's the direction of travel in which, the government appears to be going. Again, you're just back to that simple question. If your economy is not growing, then you have to find the money from somewhere. I think the FT tomorrow morning's got a story about Germany, that Germany's going to divert a lot of money, obviously, to their defence budget. As a result of that, the cost of borrowing in Germany has gone up, and they are hoping that by diverting money into defence and into manufacturing and production, albeit of weapons, that will provide an economic boost to their economy, thereby presumably being able to fund the things they want to do.
Yeah, it's an interesting one when you talk about the production of weapons, because we know that's an extremely lucrative form of manufacturing, and it just puzzles me with America. I mean, a lot puzzles me about Donald Trump's economic policies at the moment. But if you're withdrawing aid from, or support, let's say, from Ukraine, which they will now do, even though they might but this pause, they might repeat, but they're looking to withdraw it down. 70% of that aid money, and some people have gone as high as 85%, was actually spent in the US rebuilding their defence stocks after sending Ukraine stuff that was out of date, basically. So economically speaking, I mean, and people are going to shout at me for this, but war is good for economies, right?
Yeah, but there's a whole series of illogicalities in economic terms about some of the stuff that Trump's doing. You're absolutely right. I think he's got his numbers wrong. He claims that is it 350 billion.
Nowhere near.
Given to the Ukraine, when people say it's more like 120 or something like that, right?
That's what I've heard.
The whole debate round about United States tariffs is just hilarious. Anybody who thinks, right, that you can introduce tariffs on other countries and end up in a position that it is going to do anything other than put prices up in your own country, it's some pretty, ropey economics in that. But already you're seeing, countries whose tariffs are being talked about against, thinking about, batting it back and causing problems. I read a story again today that, already in America, for example, the price of eggs has gone through the roof because there ain't no eggs.
There ain't no chickens because they're all...
Yeah. That's right, yeah. It will hit the American economy. The American economy is like any other country in the global economy. You get bits for stuff that you make from other parts of the world. And if you're going to put a tariff on the bits, or you're not going to get the bits, then some of the stuff you make yourself isn't going to be made. And that means that not only are we talking about inflation in America, we're also talking about issues with, presumably unemployment and stuff in America going forward. But no, Donald tells us it's all going to be fine and we're all going to be rich. So we'll see how that plays out.
Some people are, that's for sure. And just while we're on this topic as well, I've been absolutely fascinated by the Canadian response to the tariffs, and the governor of Ontario has been very outspoken and just saying, don't test us. We will switch off your electricity. I mean, the the language that we're hearing, the narrative, the words. I mean, this is going beyond a tariff war, right? A trade war. I mean, they're talking about completely cutting the US off, and that's a huge, section, New York State and all around there, 1.5 million people without power.
Yeah, sure. And the Premier of Ontario, I think I heard him yesterday saying that he's cancelling a gigantic Starlink program, satellite program of Elon Musk's.
Yeah.
But again,
you can't blame them, can you?
What can other countries do in the face of what is, we've had the world order for a long time. We've got trade deals between different countries that, sometimes cause issues in some countries. Obviously it does, it restricts goods. We've seen a bit of that, with the European Union after Brexit. Which has made, a lot of regulation, a lot more expense for businesses not being able to export. But by and large, I think there's reasonably good relations and trade between most countries in the developed world, at least. And here we've got this gigantic spanner being put in the works. So countries will retaliate. Not only that, I noticed, for example, Xi Jinping yesterday at the People's National Assembly, they've announced some retaliation too, right? But, in addition to that, he says that, their economy is going to grow at 5% a year. It'll be interesting to see how many other economies can grow at anything like that. So China will plough on.
But it's interesting to me, John, how Donald Trump appears to think he can be the only bully in the world, right? And what he's doing with Canada and Mexico, they are bully boy tactics. And with China, and China has said, look, we're ready for actual war with you. Don't test us. And it just depends how far Donald Trump is prepared to go. I mean, he put out on Truth Social his failing social media business that he well, if Canada puts 25% on us, I'll just put another 25% on them. I mean, what does he expect people to do? Did he really think that the whole world would just go, okay, we'll pay your tariffs and we won't fight back? The EU are going to fight back. China's fighting back. Mexico have yet to tell Donald Trump what they're doing. Claudia Sheinbaum is going to release those things on Sunday. Did he really think that people would not respond?
But look, this is the difficulty that we all have. We're not quite sure how far, what lengths he's prepared to go, how chaotic he's going to be, how different he can be from one day to the next. I mean, we've seen already, looking at what's happening in Ukraine, what happened last Friday, but already, somehow or other, it looks as if hopefully there's going to be some kind of move back to some kind of rapprochement on that front. We've seen, I think, with the Canadians and the Mexicans, for example, because he's worried about the car industry in the United States.
Oh, he's come back a bit off that,
some of the tariffs. We see the big threats that get made against. I mean, I'm absolutely fascinated by this Greenland thing. I mean, the statement that he made last night where he said, what was it? We'll take over Greenland one way or another. What does he mean? And there's people sitting in Greenland who are thinking the same. Again, the Prime Minister, I think, of Greenland said today that
not for sale.
Not for sale. This is ours. And the idea, and I've seen some American commentators talking about that Donald Trump can come in and the US government come in, give everybody, 46,000 Greenlanders $2 million each, and the Americans will take it over, and that'll give them access to ownership of the whole country, that they can put military installations there, they can, take what they want out of the ground forevermore, because they've made, 40 or 50,000 Greenlanders rich, as Donald might put it. It's just utterly bizarre.
It is utterly bizarre, because
this is the world that we're living in now.
I mean, I don't think people. He thinks everybody's easily bought because he's easily bought, and so I don't think they will. And then wants to rename it Red, White and Blue Land. It still makes me laugh. I think a 4-year-old must have come up with that.
Well, see, again, all of this is fascinating. Trump appears to act on a purely transactional basis, right?
Yeah.
But the transactions, some of the transactions, when you look at them, are just like really strange. There's no equivalence in them.
No.
Keir Starmer went there last Thursday and produced the letter inviting them to the state visit, and then kind of 5 minutes later, Donald Trump hinted that somehow or other European Union would get tariffs and Britain might not. And it's like, wait a minute. And again, it's just so difficult to comprehend and understand.
I know. And then
if he wakes up in the next morning and he's got a sore head or something, he could say something completely different to Starmer and the rest of the country.
Well, he's already sort of railed back on that anyway, because when he saw Starmer and Zelensky hugging each other, he then came out and said that actually Britain isn't off the table when it comes to tariffs. So, and that's the unpredictability that certainly financial markets absolutely hate. John,
I mean, I've said this before, Petrie. You shouldn't have put a Scotsman in the White House.
well, I wouldn't have minded if it was you. I think that would have been absolutely fine. John, we're going to take a quick break. Back in a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hi there, it's Petrie here with you, and with me is John Boothman, political correspondent at the Sunday Times in Scotland. John, let's start with the Financial Times, shall we, with the papers for tomorrow. Berlin defence funding shift triggers huge bets on growth, just what we were talking about there. And there was some question, wasn't there? Because Scholz was not very interested in getting involved in anything with much to do with Ukraine. But Merz seems to be a very different person and is even talking about a Europe that has to learn how to live without America.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. Germany's a fascinating case study. Of course, for many, many years, Germany didn't spend anything in defence for pretty obvious reasons.
Yeah.
Obviously the world changed when the Berlin Wall fell. We then had that period when Germany was run really by the Christian Democrats for a very, very long time. They did some very interesting things in terms of opening Germany up. That's led to, that period now where, because of immigration, there's a whole load of, interesting developments in the political scene, not least with, the
AfD,
far right.
Yeah.
And now what's happened, Merz is now in charge. But look, again, this is a big, big reaction, obviously, to the new world that we're living in. And it's just going to lead to all of us having to think differently, work differently, run our economies differently. And as we've said already, we're already talking about welfare cuts in our country because you have to be able to pay for all of these things. Again, it's going to be a very, very, I think, quite hard transition, and something's going to have to happen quite quickly because, we are utterly intertwined with the United States in a whole number of of levels, not least in terms of defence. And it just means a whole different set of thinking from countries all over the whole of Europe.
I mean, it certainly does. And because between us, the UK and France are the only two in Europe with nuclear capability, there's going to be an awful lot of responsibility that we have to take on. In fact, Merz was talking about that and saying with the umbrella of American nuclear protection gone, pretty much, then, you know, England, but UK and France are going to have to step up. And in fact, Macron hinted at that today. He spoke on the television and said that Russia is now a real threat to Europe and that he's going to have to step up and offer that umbrella of nuclear protection to other European countries.
Yeah, absolutely, and you know we are now in a position what there will be something like 26 countries left in NATO. Well, the US is still part of NATO. Does NATO continue? You know, and that nuclear protection that we've got, right? I mean, and again, who would have thought we would even have been talking about that? There's only two countries, apart from the United States, have got nuclear weapons, France and the United Kingdom. There's a real debate now about to kick off in Scotland about you know, the SNP's position. You saw maybe Keir Starmer today in the House of Commons berating the SNP for their position of wanting no nuclear weapons in Scotland, and what that would mean for the nuclear deterrent. We've got a piece by Ian Blackford in the former SNP leader in the Times tomorrow, talking about, you know, how at least there needs to be a debate within the SNP about that now. So, you know, again, it's triggered a whole load of new thinking, because that's the direction of travel we're all going to have to go in.
Yeah, no, it really is. It's a fascinating time for us all. That's the FT. The Guardian. The US stops sharing intelligence with Kyiv to pile pressure on Zelensky, so they won't see attacks coming. That seems to be a step too far for me.
So intelligence gathering to an intelligence analysis to go. He's already said that, you know what, they're not going to get any more weapons. One, defensively, that causes huge problems for the Ukrainians. You know, without weapons like the Patriot defense system, they won't be able to deter, for example, drone attacks. Without the intelligence, they won't be able to see that stuff coming. It also, if you read any of the papers, and that story in The Guardian has this as well, they won't also be able to act offensively in the way that they've been acting. They won't know about troop movements. They won't know about targets, you know, for these Storm Shadow missiles that have been provided, for example, by Britain and France. So yeah, it's a huge, and all of this to force Ukraine back to the negotiating table. That is the negotiating table that they probably aren't going to be at anyway. And we still ain't heard anything from Russia yet about what he wants from Russia. And that's, again, the whole sort of illogicality of this that most of us are finding difficult to comprehend. It is that thing that we said already. It's like he's changed side. It's, you know, Zelensky's the dictator. It's the Ukraine who were the invaders and not the victims. And meanwhile, you know, Vladimir Putin's laughing all the way to... He's loving it.
He's absolutely loving it, because this is exactly what he wants. He wants the West to be at each other's throats. He wants us to not know what's going on, because that gives him all the power. And I keep looking at this invasion by Russia and going, you know what? They are on the back foot now. Russia is on the back foot. You know, I hate war. Everybody hates war, right? It is a disgusting thing. But you've got to look at the weakness of Russia at the moment and consider whether it is time to push back, you know, and to create a loss for Russia, which is potentially the only way that we stop him coming forward again. But of course, nobody's going to do that, which is frustrating.
Well, which is where Zelensky is, which is where I think most of the European leaders are now, simply on the basis that without security guarantees, in whatever deal is finally arrived at, even a deal which gives Russia keeping most of the stuff that they've invaded, without security guarantees, all that happens is that you get a peace, and this is what their concern is. Russia has got time to remobilise, rebuild its forces, and they'll come back again for another slice in the next couple of years.
Which is what they did after Crimea. I mean, it's not like we haven't got recent history to prove that.
Well, and you know, all in terms of what happened, as you say, about the Minsk agreement, you know, there was a ceasefire before, right? And, well, they came again.
Yeah.
And that is the problem that everybody sees, but Donald Trump doesn't seem to.
No, it's the whole theory of appeasement. Remember, was it Attlee? Was it Attlee who came back and said no?
Macmillan.
That's Macmillan. That's right. No war in our time. It's just
waving a piece of paper.
Yeah. Have you just because he believed Hitler.
Sure.
Yeah. All right then. The other story that is all over the papers is this London student may have raped 100 women. Police fear the PhD student convicted yesterday of drugging and raping 10 women could be one of the worst sex offenders in British history after recovering videos of him attacking a further 50 victims. This is Zhen Hao Jean, 28 years old, convicted of raping 3 women in London and 7 in China between 2019 and 2024. So they're now trying to track down these 50 women.
So, an amazing case when you read the detail of it. This PhD in mechanical engineering, this was his second degree in the country, Chinese born. The Daily Mail, and I don't know if any other papers have got this, but the Daily Mail's got on the front page that he's the son of a Chinese Communist Party official.
Wow.
Which is very Daily Mail, but you know, what a story if that's true. And another interesting facet of the trial was that so shocked were some of the jury members at some of the evidence that they seen in the trial that they've been excused further jury duty for 2 decades.
Wow.
So pretty horrific stuff.
Really horrific.
Spiking the drinks of women, had bottles of alcohol in his flat from which Rohypnol style drug rape drugs could be derived, filmed all of these encounters, and as you say, I think I read 170 pieces of video were examined, so there could be, as you rightly say, a whole load of other women, up to 100, The Guardian suggesting. I think, to be fair, the police were briefing 50.
It's just horrendous. At least he's been caught. Right, let's take a quick break, John, and we'll come back and have a look at the indie next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it's Petrie here with you, and with me until the top of the hour is John Boothman, political correspondent at the Sunday Times in Scotland. John, let's turn our attention to the Independent. Again, the Ukraine crisis. Now Trump cuts off intelligence support for Zelensky's forces, which basically leaves him blind as to what China is getting up to. Hopefully they, I don't know, I mean, I don't even know. I can't even finish that sentence. Who knows what Trump's going to do next? The Daily Telegraph, again, Trump turns off Ukraine missiles. And then there's this story. When you go to the doctor, you're more likely to be seen by a woman.
You know, who would have believed that 170 years ago, right, that women couldn't be doctors? And now we're reading stories in the papers, right, saying that there are now more women doctors than there are men doctors. That apparently in 2018-19, for the first time, the number of women going to university was higher than the number of men, though there are suggestions that, you know, it is the case that there are still some specialities where there are far more men, particularly around surgery, and that's something that needs to change. But, you know, all of this, right, again, just shows. My son's a finishing law student, and he says that in his class, and ever since he started this, he's now, you know, at Edinburgh University. He'd been at Glasgow for his degree and doing his diploma now. There are far more women in his law class than there are men, and again, I think that's a new phenomenon. But it's led to all sorts of changes in the workplace. You know, doctors work differently from they did before. There's a lot more part-time working among doctors.
Yeah, there's a lot of job sharing, isn't there?
Yeah, and actually, you know, it's absolutely fascinating. But again, you know, I think it was 1865 or something, the first medical graduate in Britain was a woman graduating in the whole of Britain. And, you know, it took like centuries for that, a couple of centuries for that to happen.
Do you know what I found out yesterday, John? Every day's a school day. That it wasn't until 1982 that a woman could buy a round of drinks at a pub, at the bar, with her own money.
I know men who are still like that.
Well, you're from Scotland. So.
Yeah, well, maybe that's what I...
But can you believe that? 1982.
There's all sorts of strange and wonderful bylaws, you know, that have existed in the country. Sort of MPs who tried to do some strange and wonderful things to stop proceedings in the House of Commons were then hauled up for by the Speaker for not wearing their sword, right? I mean, you know, you get all sorts of strange...
Or in the Oval Office for not wearing a suit when you're at war.
Well, indeed.
Yeah. Let's move on to the Times now. Minority and trans criminals could avoid jail under new rules. This won't go down well.
Yeah, these are new sentencing council rules, and I think this is, in this case, and certainly in England, that might be England and Wales. You know, basically, sentencing councils are creating more and more regulation round about, obviously, you know, the framework for sentencing. And in this case, what they're saying is that these two categories of, if you're an ethnic minority or a transgender person, that should be taken into account in terms of sentencing. There's been a great debate in Scotland, actually, over the past period about age, on the basis that the Sentencing Council has said much the same thing about young people, that anybody who's convicted under the age of 24 should be treated differently from someone who's older than that, because their brains are not quite mature. This is a serious thing, and what you've found is that in some very serious cases that there's been more lenient sentences given to people on the basis of those guidelines in some quite controversial cases, and this looks like an extension of that, presumably on the basis that, there must be statistics somewhere, certainly in the case of ethnic minorities, that show there are too many ethnic minorities in jail as a percentage of the population.
I thought we were all equal under the law, though. I mean, if we lose that central tenet, that and you're innocent until proven guilty, then what is the law? It then becomes a choice. And also, what's to stop people from saying that they're trans when they've committed a heinous crime?
Well, these are both very interesting conversations. The context of all of this now, though, is, we're having severe problems again right across the whole of the UK about the number of people that we have in jails.
But then you build more jails, don't you? You don't just say, well, some people won't go to jail because they're different to others.
Well, look, that's part of the debate, but, you put more people, you build more jails. Jails are very expensive. It costs a lot of money to keep people in jails. We've got the biggest jail populations in the UK than, I'm told, the whole of Western Europe. We have other systems of, other things that we can do, alternatives to prison, but somehow or other these don't seem to be as widespread, perhaps, as they are in other countries. And we've got ourselves into the slightly bizarre situation at the moment where, in Scotland they have just introduced an early release scheme. In fact, that was last year. 500 or so prisoners were released early. We're currently going through a period where I think another 500 are being released over a 6-week period because there ain't no room in the jails. And the latest thing that's happened in Scotland in relation to that is that, that there's a new jail being built in Glasgow to replace Barlinnie Jail, which is 140 years old, an old Victorian jail. It's a massive place. And it is going to cost £1 billion to build it.
Whoa.
So again, we find ourselves in a position where we haven't invested over the years in these. Spending money in building extra prisons, if that's the answer, ain't very popular with the voting public.
Well, neither is certain people getting away with a crime that they wouldn't get away with. Yeah.
Well, exactly. We will, on the one hand, say all these people should be banged up and put in jail for a long time. But if somebody comes along and says it'll cost you £1 billion for a prison, we all say, oh, wait. So, we just don't really have a particularly... all these approaches, and again, I don't know, it maybe relates to this story. I certainly think this. It's just incrementalism and sort of sticking plasters over...
Yes, it is.
And there's no... We're not very good, right? And I can think of so many policy areas where we're not very good at thinking long-term about things.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Let's fix the hole in the road instead of fixing the whole road.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no, I completely agree with you on that, but then I know that is a policy that will not, I don't know, that won't please a lot of people. Let's have a look at the Daily Mirror. Bizarre front page, as far as I'm concerned. COVID crisis 5 years on. I think there are bigger things happening in the world right now, but this is Wills, Prince William, thanking NHS heroes.
Well, you're going to hear a lot more of this in the next few days. I think it's Sunday is the first National Day of Reflection on the COVID pandemic because it's exactly 5 years since it started.
Gosh.
So that's one of the reasons I puzzled when I saw this story in the front page of the Mirror and said, why is that? But in the Scottish Parliament, for example, tomorrow we're having some sort of debate where everybody's going to stand up and we're going to say thank you to all the people who did what they did during the pandemic. And we're going to have this National Day of Reflection about what it meant for all of us.
And that includes essential work, all essential workers, does it?
I think so. But I mean, I think a National Day of Reflection is a lot wider than that as well. We've to remember, not only the hard work and the good things that were done, but also reflect on, the fact that how many people were lost and all of those things too.
The other little story is just at the top here is the rise and fall of TV legend Fanny Craddock. Did you?
Fanny, sorry, I'm going to. There is a very famous.
Oh, I'm
joke
glad you're going to
on
say it,
me.
because I was
Well, I'm
going
not
to
going to
say
say
it.
it. Well, you
Oh,
can
you're not
say
going
it.
to say it. I'm going to say
What
it.
about your donuts?
No. It was about. It was Johnny Craddock. What he said about vol-au-vents.
Oh no, it was about donuts. He said, "I hope all your donuts turn out like Fanny's."
I know it was. I think it was vol-au-vents.
Oh well, maybe it was. We don't have vol-au-vents in Scotland. We have donuts.
Yeah, he said at the end of the programme, you know, that's it, and I do hope all of your vol-au-vents turn out like Fanny's.
Well, it did.
As in Fanny Craddock.
Like, you know,
She
that
was an
happened
icon. I mean, it was before my time, but she was an icon.
Yeah, many of the people who are listening. I mean, you know, she was the first celebrity cook, I suppose.
She was the first TV cook, yeah.
Now you can't switch your television on at the weekend. You know, I mean, you can't move for cookery programmes at the weekend. You know,
well, Meghan Markle's got one now.
Well, every channel you turn on on a Saturday or a Sunday morning, you know, they're making some dish from Persia or the latest curry from Indonesia or some
you haven't got any of the
pasta
ingredients
dish from Italy. Yeah. You know, I used to think the best job in the world, you know, what's the guy, Keith Floyd, used to go around the world and get absolutely hammered in every place that he went, you know, and it was like...
They finally got him in the end, though, didn't it? But yeah, he was always drunk. He was always on television drunk.
Something to aspire to, you know, for many people, you know.
Oh, well, I just think Fanny Craddock, I love that quote. Let's take a quick break, and John and I'll be back in just a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hi there, this is Talk, and it's Petrie here with you, with John Boothman, political correspondent at the Sunday Times in Scotland. John, let's turn our attention to the Daily Express here. Fulfil la promise.
Yeah, I mean, a story that, given the turmoil in the planet, you know, sort of disappeared off the front pages. This is, you know, campaigners want the French to get more actively involved on small boats, which, again, a fascinating story. I saw Rishi Sunak was saying stuff today about, I think he was saying that his small boats message was a bit too simplistic, but here's campaigners calling for this to happen after I think a British vessel had intervened when people were suggesting it should have been the French.
Yeah, they pushed the one of the dinghy boats towards an English rescue ship instead of escorting them home. There'll be more on that, I'm sure, tomorrow. The Sun newspaper, mafia cop killer free to roam UK. This is a terrorist cop killer is today free to roam Britain's streets in yet another human rights scandal.
We talk about these stories all the time about, people's human rights and, people's individual human rights being more important than, for example, security concerns any country might have. And here's yet another one of them. It's quite interesting. Part of the debate, I think, is happening about that different kind of story about the rapist earlier on that we were talking about, the Chinese guy, is should he or will he be, or will attempts be made to deport him? But no doubt he'll have some human rights issues that will stop him going back to China, because the suggestion being that if he does go back to China, given what he's been convicted of, he'll probably have a much harder time there than he would here.
Yeah, exactly that. And the Chinese prisons, I suspect, will be a lot harsher than ours here. I just want to have a look at a couple of your picks today as well, John. The UK, this is from your paper, the UK set to launch a bid for the 2035 Women's World Cup. That's the whole of the UK. Is that unusual?
Yeah, it's a bit. Look, I just thought this was a good story because it's kind of like a happy story in amongst all the gloom. Yeah. The England football team, women's football team, has done remarkably well. I think the UK government would probably look very kindly in a bid like this because it brings the four nations of the UK together. And I think, they would regard this as being a very, very good thing. What it would involve, of course, is all the different stadiums. There would be, some games played in Ireland, some in Wales, some in Scotland, some in England. And these things have been remarkably successful any time that they've happened in the past. I always remember... I was looking at this, for example, the other day, right, during the 1966 World Cup, the great success story when North Korea came to the northeast of England and were adopted by, the local population like a local team. And when any of these tournaments have been... I was at the... fantastic but disastrous game for Scotland in Euro 96, wasn't it, when Gascoigne scored the winning goal after we had missed the penalty. But it was a great celebration, being at football tournaments, like that. And as I say, it's got a way of bringing, the country and stuff together. And I just think this is a thoroughly good idea. And then went on to say in one version of that story that I read that somehow or other it might lead to the men being next. And if you could have the World Cup coming to this country, to Britain, it would just be amazing.
Yeah, and like you said, to involve all of the whole of the United Kingdom would be absolutely brilliant. The Daily Mail, Pete Hegseth. I don't even have words, but...
Well, again, this relates back to what we were talking about earlier. A tweet from a Chinese embassy official about a trade war, talking about the possibility of other kind of wars. And instead of, in the old days, any kind of diplomat or minister or responsible being in charge, adult in a room playing this kind of thing down, he steps up to the plate and does the opposite, which leads then to stories, like they were talking about earlier about the possibility of war with China. Words fail me.
Where is the adult in the... I swear this is like I've slipped into an alternate universe and I don't like it here. But yeah, this is Defence Secretary Pete Hegseth ex-Fox and Friends presenter, somewhat of a drinker.
Well qualified to be the defence secretary
Yeah,
of the
you'd
biggest
think,
nation
right?
in the world. Yeah.
Yeah, and also a bit of a drinker, and has a reputation that is none too favourable when it comes to his treatment of women. So yeah, well, we're prepared. I mean, it's just all boys' club, isn't it? What's wrong with them? Well, we're prepared. For those who long for peace must prepare for war. I mean, what?
We've spent a long time, and any times we've chatted, Petrie, talking about, you know, the what's the word I'm looking for, the shortcomings of the Prime Minister. You know, last week, you know, both Starmer and Macron were the adults in the room. At least I think that's what it looked like to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And it was good, actually, to have, in their own kind of quiet way, them step up. I think they, as we saw with Zelensky on Friday, they were able to deal with Trump. That at least, you know, they didn't come. I mean, I certainly beforehand thought this could be a big mistake. You know, going across to the Oval Office, sitting in there with Trump, you don't know what you're going to get. And actually, you know, it was beyond my expectations what happened, you know, with both of Macron on Wednesday and Starmer on Thursday. But again, it all fell apart with Zelensky. But look, you know, they're trying their best again to step up to the plate and try and put something more reasonable on the table. And it's a hard ask, you know.
I mean, dealing with people like that, I mean, it must be exhausting. You know, because you're dealing with Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth and JD Vance. I mean, I wouldn't even know where to start. So hat off to Starmer. I mean, seriously, I did, like I said yesterday, I did feel like I needed a shower after watching him sucking up to Trump. But, you know, he had to do it, I guess. I want to, here we go. This is a beaver story. I love a beaver story.
This is an amazing
Beaver story of the day.
Family of beavers moved in and built the dam.
Beaver story of the day.
I mean, you know, so in Dorset, beavers Eurasian beavers that have been bred in Scotland have been released in Dorset. Now, beavers basically are a native species to Britain. They disappeared, I think, 400 years ago. I mean, we used to have about, I think, 15 years ago, some amusement because around about, I think, 2006, something like that, somebody released beavers from some private estate, we think, into Tayside. So we ran about for ages doing stories about what became affectionately known as feral beavers, right?
I'm such a child.
It's just bizarre, right? But then in 2009, the Scottish Government started getting involved seriously in the reintroduction of beavers in the West Highlands at first. There are now, I think, 1,500 of them in Scotland.
Wow.
And there's going to be, by 2030, it's projected to be maybe 10,000. And I think earlier this year, there were wild beavers born in the Cairngorms National Park. So actually, it's quite a serious story. And they change the environment. They are a bit of a pest, I think, for a lot of landowners and for farmers. But, you know, this is something that's happening. Conservationists say it's a good thing, and now it's happening in England.
Yeah,
now,
I mean, it is a good thing because they do build dams, and we have a water problem, and they do understand how water should flow in a way that it seems that engineers don't.
No, you know, there's other things that have happened in this kind of front in Scotland. Seagulls have been introduced all round about Scotland, round about the coasts. By and large, I think that's gone quite well. You do get quite a lot of stories about sea eagles attacking lambs, but I think as a conservation thing, it seems to have worked by and large. We are now into, you know, very, very strange and wonderful things happening where, you know, in the past few weeks, wildcats have been released in the Highlands illegally. By, well, over-enthusiastic rewilders, I suppose. Guerrilla rewilders, I think they're called. And And there's even talk, I mean, and you may have seen this story in the past couple of weeks about the reintroduction of wolves in the Highlands.
Yes, I have, yeah. I mean, that, again, farmers won't be happy with that, but I'm sure it'll be beautiful up there.
We'll just stick to the beavers for the time being.
Stick to the beavers for now. The beavers, yeah. I love them. I think they're absolutely amazing. And there was a story, wasn't there, in some council or other that had been arguing about building a dam of some sort, some rogue waterway. And they've been arguing about it for like 5 years. And the beavers just went in and built it.
There's a very famous story about a council meeting in the Highlands where the one councillor proposed, what was it, buying a gazebo. And another councillor stood up and said, buy two and they could breed. Very bad joke.
Very, very bad joke. Another bad joke, I think, just very briefly, we've got a minute, I think. Have you seen The Sun, not the paper, up in Scotland? This is a Daily Star saying, warning, orange ball of fire spotted in the sky. Stay indoors, say weather boffs, or risk getting a tan. Have you seen much?
I think that's an English phenomenon so far. The one thing I'm glad about, right, and I keep saying this all the time because I mean it, is that it's great to get up in the morning and it's light and it's great to come back for your work. Well, not you in this case. No. Come back for your work and it's light. It makes such a difference. You know, anywhere north of the border, it's kind of dark, pretty... You know, until kind of 9 o'clock in the morning, and it gets dark at sort of 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and it sort of really hikes me off a bit, and it's quite depressing.
It's been a long winter.
It's great that the springs are coming.
Yeah, the spring is coming, and I am so glad. Thank you very much. Will you thank your daughter for letting me borrow you for the hour, John? Have a very good evening. John Boothman there, political correspondent, The Sunday Times in Scotland. Right, coming up. It is now your hour. This is just you and me, and all we do here is talk. That's it. And you get the chance to talk back. I'm asking you about the billions of pounds that are now expected in spending cuts, which will include welfare and welfare payments, particularly for those people who are on long-term sickness benefit. I'll go into the numbers on that in just a moment. But we often hear about the people who are lying, skiving, fibbing about being ill to get money. That's the stories that make it to the papers. But what about those people who desperately need this payment? Are you one of those? Because those are the voices that we don't hear. So give me a call, 0344 499 1000, and you can message me as well on 87222.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Ooh, groovy. Sounds like the music people use on TikTok. Hello there, good morning. It's Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock, and this is your hour. It's an entire hour where it's just you and me talking, and I read some messages as well. So what are we talking about? We're talking about the likelihood of big cuts coming in the spring sort of mini budget. In fact, I just wanted to show you the front page of the Independent if I can find it. But anyway, basically there are going to be cuts to welfare spending at the moment. If you are somebody who's on long-term sickness benefit, then they want to encourage you back to work. Now, it depends whether they use a carrot or a stick in which to do that, but the iPaper has this on the front of it. Benefit cuts set to be bigger than Reeves promised, as Treasury rules out new tax hikes. So she is coming after benefits, and the benefit that they are most concerned about is the long-term sickness benefit. Look, last year we spent £65 billion on those payments, and that is due, it's projected to rise to £100 billion a year. We cannot afford it. That's just those benefits. That's not the entire benefit budget. So, look, there are people who are taking the mick, but I tend to think it's more complicated than that. I do think there are people who could work who are on these benefits, who perhaps at the beginning couldn't. But I do understand why they feel it is safer to stay on those benefits than it is to risk what the rest of us do in this world, particularly when you've got rent to pay and you've got bills to pay, and you don't know if the job is going to last forever. It may not be a very good quality job. It may be one that is just temporary, and you come off benefits and then you've got to go back on them. So look, I think it does disincentivise work, but not in a way that most people would say it. Most people would say it disincentivises work because they're so easy to get, and you can just sit around on your backside and have 2 holidays a year and buy a new television if you're on these benefits. I don't believe that in its entirety. I do think that there are some people, of course there are, taking the mick, because wherever you've got a system there will be people who rip it off. But I think it's more nuanced. And I think that we've all been groomed by the mainstream media with stories about people who've been faking illnesses. I think we've been groomed by various TV channels, radio stations, who say, oh, all those people on those benefits are all feckless, they're all lazy, they're all stealing our money. And some are. But I do think it is slightly more complicated than that. And what I always try to do, sometimes I don't do it very successfully, but what I always try to do is try to imagine what it must be like walking in somebody else's shoes. It doesn't mean that I would agree with the journey that they're on, but I will always try and walk it, so at least I can have a modicum of understanding. But I don't have much understanding on this, and I'm always completely honest with you guys. So I need your experience of this. So when people say, oh, you're lazy, you're feckless, or these are too easy to get, it's too easy to do this, it's too easy to do that, I think that those are the narratives that people hear, and those are the narratives that people understand. So I want to hear from you. I want to hear, is it really that easy? Is it that you're lazy? I mean, you're not likely to say you're lazy, right? But give me a call, because yours are the voices that we don't hear. And that's what this space is all about. So give me a call. 0344 499 1000. If you're a little bit nervous about calling, don't be. I've got some lovely team out there. I've got Sam and Jodie. They will pick up your calls, and maybe even Yana. who knows if it gets really busy. So they're there for you, and just have a chat with them, see if you want to go on air or not. If not, send me a message, 87222, put the word talk up front, and then your message. Right, so let's crack on. Let's talk to Luke, who's in Bromley. Good morning, Luke.
Good morning, Petrie. We've spoken a few times before. And
We
I thought I'd give you a call.
We have. How are you? All right?
I'm fine, thank you. It's nice to see you too. I'm watching on the TV and on mute at the same time, so that's quite nice.
Hello. Right, Luke.
Life size.
So tell me, oh God, how awful for you.
Oh,
crikey, I'll just do that
okay.
now. Right, so tell me about benefits.
Well, listen, we know that there's a mixed bag. Clearly the amount of people on benefits is rising, so one has to wonder, does everyone need to be on benefits? Perhaps not. But there's clearly other people who do need to be. And some people need it for a period of time while they try and get back on their feet somehow or find where they are. What I can say is there's someone in my young 40s with Parkinson's disease and had it for like 8 years that I've, known about it anyway, is that I've achieved more with it than without. So
yeah, you've been amazing. You're an inspiration. Yeah. You really are.
Well, it's a question of, I didn't look at what I can't do, I looked at what I can do, and then I got on with it, Because I thought, okay, look, my energy cuts down, it's obviously got progressively worse. My walking's not great sometimes. Sometimes I can't walk through doors. It's a bit weird, You
lose your balance. Like that happens to me as well with my MS. I bump into the doorways.
Multiple, sometimes I'm like a ping pong ball going on the lounge, And I go past the kitchen door and then back in it again. But, you have to make laugh of it. But it's a question of, what can I do? Who can I help? What am I able to do? And I find with that attitude, when you can actually boast about your weakness and turn it into a strength and see what other people's weaknesses are, and see what their strengths are, then you can actually work with each other. And I found that I've achieved more with Parkinson's than without. I mean,
you set up a business, didn't you? You set up your own business, yeah.
Well, look, I was released from one of the biggest banks. I won't say which one, but they got rid of me when they knew I had Parkinson's, so that was that thing. Then I went solo. Then eventually I couldn't sustain it, so I was sent to job centre. So went on a bus to Bromley Job Centre, queued up in a suit, wasn't allowed in because I thought I didn't realise I was on benefits, believe it or not. It was a bit weird, so got pushed around to another door. Anyway, went up to third level, and I said, I don't want to take benefits. I had a letter in my pocket to say you can have all the benefits you can have. I didn't want to take benefits, I wanted to start a company. So they said, what does a salesman know about cleaning? And my wife would probably agree, but, so I started a cleaning company. And I said, look, I want to employ people downstairs who are queuing up for jobs. And I looked out from the third window to Canary Wharf that want to clean those towers. Within 2 weeks, my business was cleaning a hotel. What was it? 400 hours? No, 100 hours a week, 400 hours a month. Within 9 months, we were cleaning 4 towers in Canary Wharf, and done lots more since then, obviously. But it's a challenge, and I can think, oh boy, it's hard to get up and it's painful. I mean, my alarm clock is pain, and you have challenges of all sorts with tremors and with memory and with tiredness, and but there's no point talking about what I can't do. What I can do is I can inspire other people to do great things. I can give them reasons to get up in the morning, I can pay them well, I can treat them well, and I can see how I can help other businesses to achieve what they're doing by helping mums back into work. And I set myself a target of 200 mums within 5 years. I achieved that within 4 years, and I ended up helping about 340 mums back into work through my company and 40 fathers. I'm now about to sell my company in April and be on the board of a delivering company.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is that does it depend, though, if you've got a can or can't do attitude? When I was diagnosed, and I've only just recently started talking about it publicly, I didn't talk about it, I've been diagnosed for 10 years now.
Sure.
And I just refused to give in to it. People would say, I'd say, look, I'm going to do what the doctors tell me to do. I'm going to do all the tests. I'll take all the drugs and everything. But as far as I'm concerned, I do not have MS. I don't live it.
Right.
I won't live it. And yes, there are limitations. Of course, there are for me as well. Tiredness being one of them, losing my balance, falling over in the street, which is really embarrassing. And there are certain issues that crop up along the way. Sometimes pain, or the kind of neurological pain. But it's more of a case that I kind of just go, oh well, that's just something.
It's called a new normal.
Yes.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I don't give in to it. I won't sort of pander to it.
You look at what you can do. Look, I tell people, I mean, I'm roughly, if I can do 30% of what the average person can do, I'll do that to 100% every day, right? And with that, you'll end up achieving more than other people, as you do too. And you're a great inspiration to people. You help many people to express themselves, and you raise awareness of all sorts of things. Fantastic. I try and do the same. Yeah, well, it's just like I say, and what can we do? Now, not everyone can start a business, not everyone can be radio presenter on TV and whatever else, but we can do great things. We can help other people. We can get, what I make sure I do is I write my story every day. I create my story. I do keynote speaking sometimes in front of businesses, and I write my story every day. And I'm always tweaking it, just trying to see what I can do. 2025, in theory, should be a worse year physically, but I can tell you it's going to be a better year. I'll achieve more things this year than other years. Obviously, I'm just entering into being sitting on the board of directors. I'm going to be in charge of charity donations and things like this,
But not everybody. I mean, look, you are extraordinary. I think you are remarkable, what you've done, because you didn't just give in to a path that was destined for you, right? But how do we encourage other people to see their illnesses? And some people have extreme pain, or they can't. They can't see a way of being positive about their health.
I know.
How do we encourage that?
How do we help them? How do we also help other people to see it too? I try and encourage people through my keynote speaking, look at other people and see how you can help them out of the box that they've put themselves in, or people put them in. I was put into a box, job centre, okay, but I took myself out of the box. I was wearing a suit and they wouldn't let me in. Imagine. So people are put into a box all the time. Or the salesman can start a cleaning company. But a few of those boxes get those boxes, pile them high, and climb on top of them. It will be amazing how far you can get and what you can achieve. And so what can you do? Surround yourself with positive people. Get rid of the negative people. Normally being positive gets rid of them anyway. Set yourself aspirations which are far higher than people would say. People would tell me, "Oh, Luke, you can't do this. You can't sell your company." I've achieved all of that, and I'll achieve more on top. And and see who else you can pull up with you. I mean, this evening, I don't want to show off here, but I was filling up with you, and there's a homeless man, okay, and we don't get many homeless people around where I live, so he stuck out of it. And I looked at what he was wearing, and I thought, it was cold, it's bitter outside. So I said to him, look, I've got no money on me because it's all cards. I said, stay there, I'm going to go home and get you something. So I went home, got him a £200 jacket, and I've got 2 jackets, so I gave him that. I said, here's this, I got a woolly hat, woolly jumper, bag full of food from the cupboards. My wife said, what are you doing, Luke? I said, and I gave him toothbrush, shower gel, all these things from around the house. I was tripping over my stuff to get stuff, so it shows how much stuff we have in the house, isn't it, really? Yeah. And eventually I got back to him because obviously it wasn't so quick. And the guy said, I thought it wasn't coming. I said, of course I'm coming back. I just got Parkinson's, it's a bit slow. And I left him with all his stuff. And then he said, I just need a few quid to get into a homeless shelter or something. And I said, where's that? He said, Swanley, he's going to get a train. So I gave him to the station. And in that lift, I managed to talk to him and said, look, you're not charity, we're equal for you, I've got challenges, you've got challenges, but you just need a bit of help. What did you used to do before you were on the street? You used to be a driver for forklifts. I said, right, focus on that and make sure you do everything you can every day to work towards that. I also gave him a Bible, I'm a Christian, and I said, there's a Bible in there, can you read? Yes, he can. He's going to read that to try and give him positivity and stuff and help him to have a hope. I said, do this, here's a tenner to get you into the shelter, and do what you can every day, and make sure by the summer you're back and working. And just try and help people along the way. Just look out, how can you do this? It would have been far easier just to, drop on my sofa because I'd just come back from church funny enough. So what can we do to help other people? And we need to see how we can help other people to be positive.
I agree, but I just don't know how. There's a lot of people who become very negative, because of the whole experience is negative. And the longer you've been on benefits, the longer you stay on them, right?
It does, that's right. And again, I've got loads of good contacts, as you do too, who are pretty well known and stuff. And so you use those contacts to try and open up doors for them to say, look, have you thought about getting someone in? Don't look at this person who has troubles with walking. Don't look at the fact they can't walk. Think of what they can do. They're probably, because when you lose something, you gain other things, right? Yeah. So
I taught myself to paint.
Right, okay. What are those things? Yeah. And obviously your job involves you sitting, obviously you do research for it as well and stuff, but essentially you're sitting there, so you're not running about.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sitting there like a lump.
So you're doing to strength, but...
which is great. I mean, the company has to make reasonable adjustment for me, and that's fine. They're happy with doing that, and a lot of companies will make reasonable adjustment for people, and they have to.
And I think the government need to recognise that everyone's got a worth, and everyone's got good things they're good at. And maybe what can we do to help them? Because yes, maybe they can't regularly earn regular money, but they need to top it up maybe as a government thing. But give people work is more than just earning money. It's about being.
I always say that, Luke. That comes straight out of my play. But work is about way more. The fun that I have with my team when I get here. It's all about that communication, about being with people, and it is so vital to mental health.
And the final thing I'll say is, everyone says you've got to be positive, be good, be aspirational and things. I'll say, yes, that's true, but you also say, who am I going to be? You've got to be somebody. And that's what I did. I set myself a target. I won UK Entrepreneur of the Year at the UK Business Awards, done other things as well, and they'll go on to achieve more things, I'm sure. And each person listening can do great things and find a charity that you can help. Go to church, find good people there, I do. But, family members, people you don't know, even a homeless person you won't see again, doesn't matter. Do what you can to make their day. If everyone does that, I think the world will be a much better place.
Oh, yeah, I absolutely, Luke. Like I said, you're always an inspiration. You always give me faith. When I've lost faith in humanity, when I speak to you, Luke, it always lifts my spirit. So thank you so much for doing that, Luke. Extraordinary, man. Let's think about what we can do, not what we can't do. I tell you what I have to do right now is take a break, but I'll be back in a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there. A very good morning to you. It's sorry, one of my colleagues is just winding me up. Good morning to you. It's Petrie here. Look, we're talking about the billions of pounds that are on their way to cut benefits, and one of the things that they're going to be looking very closely at are the benefits that go to people who are on long-term sick. Right, so all of those benefits they'll be looking at very closely, and it appears those cuts will be much bigger than we think. And I've heard around about 5 billion, so that's still big enough, right? But I just want to know from you, really, because we hear about the people that are cheating the system and saying it's far too easy and all of those things. But is it really that easy? And when I talk to you guys, you always impress upon me that it's not that easy to get these benefits in the first place. So how can you be lying about it if you're having to jump through hoops and fill in 45 pages of nonsensical questions? I don't understand. And I'm not stupid. I do know that there will be some people cheating the system. There'll be others of course, who are trapped in the system, which is a different thing, that they possibly could get a job, but the risk is too great. The risk, they're quite, I'm not going to say comfortable where they are, but it's safe. I think that's the word to use, that it is safe to be on benefits because you know when the money's coming in, you know what it's going to pay for, and you know, providing you fulfil all the requirements, it's always going to be there. Whereas a job isn't like that, and coming off benefits once you're on them is also quite a risky thing to do. So I can see that there are issues with the system that actually need to be changed to make it easier for people to kind of dip in and out of benefits and maybe put their toe in the water of work and see how that job goes, and then maybe after 3 months probation, you know, then things will change. I don't know. I mean, I reckon if I had 5 minutes and a spare piece of paper, I could probably draft something out that would work reasonably well. But it doesn't seem that it's either all or nothing. And we've been, as a nation, groomed into believing that every single one of you on these payments is lying. You're faking it. You're not real. And so it's easy to take those things away from you. You see how that goes? You start to hate on a group of people, and the whole of the press then hate on a certain group of people, and then they take something away from that group of people, and nobody cares. And they did that. They thought they were doing that with old age pensioners taking away their winter fuel allowance, right? Because there was all those stories about how pensioners had all the money and they had all the property and blah, blah, blah. And so when that winter fuel was taken away from you, the Labour government expected everyone to go, yeah, well, they deserve it because they're old and they're rich. Some people did say that, but that's how it works in this country. So we pick a group of people that we don't like, and at the moment it's people on benefits. And then we isolate them and we other them and we misrepresent them, and then when we screw them, everyone will applaud. That's what happens, and that's what is happening. Carol is in Manchester. Hello, Carol.
Hi there again. Love your programme.
Thank you.
Love John from Scotland anyway. Absolutely.
He's fabulous, isn't he?
Oh, love it. Well, yeah. I was the Burns before I was the Murphys, so get there with it. But totally agree with you. I'm fuming. I've never been so fuming so much. I'm trying to calm down. I'm absolutely fuming regarding this. This is shocking. Absolutely shocking.
It is. I think it's shocking for a Labour, more shocking for a Labour government.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, although they're now coming back and saying, and this is straight out of the Donald Trump playbook as well. They're saying things like, "Well, we're about the working people."
Yes.
But they've been about supporting the vulnerable as well, and now it seems like, oh well. As long as we can vilify the vulnerable, we can get rid of it.
Easy picking.
Easy picking. Quite right.
Because over the last 3 years, bad luck, you know, like they call it the bad luck, you know, like with it, it's been more than that.
Yeah.
More than 3 years, right, regarding with it. So I've had two, anyway, in my family, which is my husband, at the end of the day, he's had cancer, he's had half of his bowel removed, and my husband went back to work a few weeks ago, and he had his operation in September. So there you go, right? Wow. So he's no lazy person or whatever.
Yeah. I've
had my son, I've got 3 children. My son, who is play for Lancashire in Manchester. Lancashire, at the end of the day, massive with it. He's done everything, professional, everything or whatever. Something happened to him. We do think it was something to do with the COVID. He's young. He's only in his 20s or whatever. He only had this procedure only done around about 4 weeks ago, and he's on his feet. He was absolutely in a wheelchair, my son. Absolutely in a wheelchair because of 2 years of waiting to see what's happened to him. And we still don't know what happened to him. Anyway, he's had this procedure or whatever. Even in his procedure and what happened, he went for a job with the National Health and whatever. Anyway, God bless him. They're looking upon him and kept it with him for 8 months until he could get over whatever he'd get over. So he's no lazy person. My husband is no lazy person or whatever. And of course you're going to have lazy people or taking or whatever. They're a very small amount of people. And you know why? Because the money they get is next to nothing. It won't pay you rent, it won't, what you call it, it's a load of rubbish. And this person who's going to go in Labour, oh, absolutely. If they want to cut something, let them look into their own department. Let them look into the, people. I mean, I'll let you know now, we are where I live, and I said to you several months ago, or probably about half a year ago, regarding about our MP, Andrew Gwynn. He was a good, he's gone. And he's gone with 11 people who are on what, them people are still being paid what they're paid. So the government needs to look into their government and take away of what. I'm sorry, I'm so angry.
No, but you're right. I mean, just looking at the number of civil servants now that we have, we've got thousands and thousands more than we've ever had before. We don't need them. There's a lot of people that are not working full, at their full capacity. They're running around with clipboards. There are people in every organisation that do that. I could probably name half a dozen here if I thought hard enough. There are people just who clipboard Johnnies, I call them. There were certainly a load of them at the BBC. And all you do is see them walking around, apparently rushing from meeting to meeting, but they weren't. They just looked busy, and that was their job, looking busy.
And to have a go at the most vulnerable people.
But you're right. They're easy to have a go at because the whole nation, a lot of people believe that everybody on benefits is a lying, cheating scumbag.
They're not.
No,
and they're not. They're just like ordinary people, like ourselves, right? That need a bit of help. My husband is 60. Oh my God, he's 65 this year. He has never ever been on benefits, only with this cancer, and he was so annoyed with that.
Yeah.
He was so annoyed with that. In fact, to be honest, he didn't take the full benefit, including his son, because that's how we are. And I know there is people that do that, but I reckon only about 10%.
Yeah, I
20%.
I don't think that it is the numbers are as big as we're told, because they don't know. And also I do also think there are people who are trapped on benefits, which is not the same thing.
And I know
as
them,
cheating.
and I have seen them for years and years and years, and it's a shame. Because there's something not right. There's something.
The system doesn't allow for flexibility, and I think that is the major issue. And if they just looked at that and looked into how to help people into work without stripping everything away, maybe pay their rent for the first 3 months, or help them, and then they'll be braver.
I totally agree with you. You know, like
benefits.
Pay for them. Like for the. They've done it in other countries. Pay for them for about 3 months, and when you're talking about about this government or whatever for help, why don't they put on television, literally on television in different areas or different to help, like free help or whatever. But they can't do it, can they? Because they look so stupid.
It's easier for them to take away than it is to give, and honestly, the people, I suspect that a good deal of people are trapped on benefits who are too scared to come off them, and I completely understand that. It's a very unsettled world. You should be able to go out of benefits and dip back in. They should have you so that you don't lose anything. You know, you don't have to spend 6 weeks trying to get back on benefits. I don't know why it's not done. There is a way to do it. There is just no political will. Carol, thank you very much indeed. Great call as usual. I've got to take a break, but I will be back to talk to Rachel.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hi there, and a very good morning to you. It's Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. I've got loads of messages. So, Rachel, if you just give me a minute or two, I just want to read a few of them out. Derek says, I receive employment and support allowance, sick money. I also get PIP at a higher rate. I've always worked and was 45 when I was diagnosed with COPD. I'm on oxygen in a wheelchair. Oh, bless you. I need help to wash and dress. I would go back to work tomorrow if I could. And I know that so many people are like that as well. I know people on the sick and PIP and even work cash in hand, and there's nothing wrong with them. It's so easy to claim sick benefits as well as PIP. It's a disgrace. Is that true? That's from Derek in Manchester. Because I've always heard it was quite difficult to claim PIP. But I do know that people cheat. Of course they do. Of course they do. Derek, thank you for that. Sharon said, I've got 2 clients, one severely autistic and a person who is bedbound. I get £81.90 per week to care for both of them. It's so wrong that they're targeting the vulnerable and me pretty much on a poverty line for doing the job that the government won't do. And then Sharon's right, saving the country billions by doing that sort of work. Andrew in Salisbury says, great topics this week, Petrie. Thank you. Benefits need to be better protected and administered, and they will cut themselves. Yeah, but that's too difficult, isn't it? It's much easier to go and pick the pockets of the vulnerable. And then he says, oh, by the way, J.D. Vance looks like Robert Smith from The Cure without the hair and makeup. This is because I was saying yesterday that J.D. Vance reminds me of somebody, and every time I sort of look at it, I go, oh, I can't remember who it is. So, but thank you for the suggestion. Universal credit is an in-work benefit. I'm long-term sick, but not sick enough to get the extra payment according to the DWP. I live on £80 a week. I'm not lazy. I just can't do it. And also, PIP is notoriously hard to claim. I tried and I've been denied 3 times. So there you go. That's Kaz, Derek, saying that it's hard to claim. So those people must be brilliant actors. It's interesting, isn't it, how government has. No government has ever been in any hurry to cut MPs' salaries and expenses. It's always been anything needed by us peasants. Yep, I'm afraid that is the rule at the moment. Rachel is in Liverpool. Thank you for waiting, Rachel. Good morning.
Good morning. Hello.
Hey.
Hi. There's so many aspects to this, isn't there? I'm very against using labels in my day-to-day life. I do have to, because we all have to identify in order to communicate with people and be human, basically. But when it comes to this, it's sort of like, I think some people, the very few are like the really greedy type of lazy, scheming to get what they can. That is the very, very few, I would say. I think the vast majority of people will be genuine now. I think also some people are lazy and they don't know they're lazy. They might just be lacking in direction. And to be honest, I just think it comes down to your mental health, again, the vast majority of the time. Because if you think about how many people are probably on this long-term benefit for mental health, firstly, it's like planting the seed and watering it to tell someone you're on long-term benefits, and now they're taking it away from them. It's like it shouldn't have been probably put in place. Do other things, like treat the mind. So I think people who have got mental health, the majority have probably had some sort of trauma growing up. So it's like everyone's so individual, like snowflakes, so different, aren't we? And I also think as well, if maybe in schools there could be, to prevent these sorts of things, if in a school, maybe just once a month, there's a counsellor to speak to the kids, just because when they grow up as adults, either they won't, a lot of them may not turn out and do make bad choices which will affect other people and so on, the way it does.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that, Rachel. But it is interesting when we talk about mental health problems, because one of the most beneficial things about working is for your mental health. So there are people, and when you said you plant a seed and you water it, I wonder if putting somebody on benefits does exactly that it encourages a closing down of any positive mental health attributes. So you bung somebody onto benefits because that's the easy fix, right? It's like giving somebody antidepressants rather than talking therapy. So you bung them in on this long-term sick, and then you leave them there to sort of fester, and their mental health will get worse, because they're not getting the treatment and they're not seeing people and they're perhaps shutting themselves down. And so we are growing that plant, if you like.
Yeah, I do think so. I think that's spot on to what I think, because I always worked since I was 16, and then I got sick, and there was a period of time I physically wouldn't have been able to because I had to get better. But then it's kind of like, I realise now that during that time, there was moments when I was lazy, but at that time I really didn't think I was. I was just totally lacking in any sort of passion. Because then, and that's there's a very fine line between depression and laziness, but in the sense of what I was like. I
agree. I think you've put it brilliantly, Rachel. I really do, because I do think that a lot of people who are presenting with mental health issues perhaps have just in that mood where I don't want to do anything, I can't think of anything I want to do, there's no chances for me. And I think there's a lot of young people who are having mental health issues because they're going, well, what's the point? I'll never be able to buy a house. The social contract has broken down. What's the point in working? What's the point in being part of society when society won't allow me to climb the ladder?
Yeah, exactly. And maybe just one slight news flash once a week, just for the youngsters to see. Just one positive news. I've never in my whole 37 years on Earth seen one positive thing on the news ever.
Yeah.
So someone got stuck in the background the corner from where I lived once, and they got pulled out. So they were in the newspaper. That was it.
Wow. I think you're right, and I think when we're looking at the number of young people, particularly who are, and I would class you as a young person as well, who may be not working for mental health issues. There are very good reasons, and you know, I used to think, well, you know, they should just be at work; it's good for them. But I can understand as well that attitude of, well, what's in it for me? What's the point? Why do I need to be part of society when society isn't going to... I'm not going to be able to afford a family. I'm not going to be able to afford a home. I'm not going to be able to afford the car that I want. And you know, I'm not... I might as well... And then you lose the will, don't you?
Yeah. I think they're the people that are like... Some people are stuck. And the thing that...
Yeah, I get the thing.
What you just said is sort of like fear. So they're probably just scared. I mean, I've been there myself too. I'm desperate to work now. I'd rather have less money as long as I'm out working, just because me personally, I know that's what I need, to speak to people, to be a human being and not just to try and look for money. It's just, it's so many things come with speaking to people and interacting, having routines.
So much, yeah.
There's so many aspects to it, isn't there? Well, thank you for having me on. I'm a little bit nervous. I've never been,
my darling. Listen, you can call any time. I think you made some excellent points. So you look after yourself and you call again, all right?
I will do. Thank you very much.
All right, then. Have a wonderful rest of your morning. Edina is in Berkshire. Good morning.
Good morning, Petrie. You got my name right.
Well, do I not normally?
You know, other people don't.
Right, okay. Well, you got my name right as well, which is a miracle.
I get called Edry. I get called Edna and all the rest of it.
Yeah, I get called Petra. So, yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you on the name front. So, Edina, tell me, what do you think of you know, these cuts that are going to be coming down the line?
I am so scared of these cuts, as I'm one of the many disabled people. So scared that our benefit is getting stopped. If I didn't have them, I would literally die. And I know that sounds dramatic.
No. I know there are people
I've got so many medical conditions that started when I was 14, and I'm 60 this year. And things have just got worse and worse and worse with it. I've got, I think it's 23 medical conditions.
Wow, you're greedy.
I know. the one I really want, I can get a badge, is diabetes. No, I don't.
Yeah, do you have all the badges on you, like a Cub Scout for all the illnesses? You should do.
Yeah,
but listen, I don't think. I mean, I hope that it's... I mean, this is always my fear with when I see these cuts, is that they throw the baby out with the bathwater. And I genuinely don't believe that they're planning to be cruel to people like you.
I'm hoping not, but, you know, the back of your mind, you know you're genuine. And one of the things, it's no wonder really, depression, anxiety, and I'm under the autism spectrum as well. But I've got a lot of serious medical conditions, like my heart. I come out of hospital today. I've had 2 stents put in today.
Wow.
Yeah, I had to go into hospital last July because my heart was going mental. It was going up to about 162.
Oh, crikey.
And it should be somewhere between 60 and 100. So,
that must have been scary.
Very. But the thing is, I've had angina for years, and I got that off my mum. And quite a lot of the family had, you know, heart trouble and what. Sorry if I have to keep coughing. After today, I'm so dry. Oh, dear me, sorry. And so, and I was taken into hospital. I didn't have chest pain at the time, even though I've got angina. I had a funny feeling in my stomach, and it was going on for about 5 days.
Wow.
And I was just so out of breath go in the kitchen, make a drink, come and sit down. That's it. That's all I could do. I use a wheelchair if I'm going to the hospital, which is a lot. And I use my mobility scooter to go to town. And as I said, I've got about, I think, about 23 conditions, and I take over 30 tablets a day.
Blimey, you
so it's my heart. I do, yeah. When I get the 2 month prescriptions, it sort of literally fills my basket.
Well, look, what I don't want you to do, Adina, is to worry. And if anything like they come after you, just give us a call back here, because I don't think I don't believe they plan to be cruel. I could be wrong, and I don't believe that people like you will necessarily be affected.
Yeah,
I think you'll
really
be all right.
Hope so.
Well, listen, if they come anywhere near Adina, you just tell me, all right? You just call me back.
I will do. And I got this morning yesterday. I had a brown envelope on the doorstep, and I thought, oh God, no!
Oh, God,
and I opened it. It's for the migration to universal credit. I've been dreading that.
Oh, is that a bad thing?
Yeah. When people first went on universal credit, when it first started, they didn't include the disabled premium that you get on ESA. So people were losing £200-300 a month.
What?
They're all being taken to court now because of it, and they're winning.
Good.
They're winning. I get PIP, and I get PIP every 4 weeks, and I get ESA every 2 weeks. So I'm waiting till I get my next full amount of money to apply. I'm going to get all my paperwork and everything I need. So once I get paid all that lot, then I'm going to apply, because it says after 2 weeks your benefit stops.
I mean, like you need that sort of stress. I mean, what the hell are they playing at? And this is what really annoys me, Adina, is that they've got no idea about the life that you're living at the moment, and neither do they care. Well, listen, good luck with that. You stay in touch, please. Let me know what's going on. I've got to go, because otherwise I'll be in real trouble, because I've got to go to a quick break, but I'll be back in just a second.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hi there, good morning to you. This is Talk and it's Petrie here with you until the top of the hour. Got a lovely message here from Harmony. So this is not aimed at you. I love you and your show so much, but I'm sick and tired of hearing about how easy benefits are to get on from people who haven't got a clue. This isn't pointed at you, and it isn't about myself, but I now have PTSD from what the DWP has done to me. Through trying to get PIP in the past, and it's horrific. That's without all the other chronic illnesses that I have to deal with. Anyone that is talking about this, please don't tar everyone with the same brush, as it's always done when talking about the welfare state. Like you said, Harmony, not by me. Hang on a second. I agree that there are people who can work and should be made to work, though. There's definitely been an added growing problem since COVID, but also there just needs to be some compassion for the people that can't work and those who are vulnerable. And of course, there are those that could work underplaying the system. These should be dealt with and shouldn't be able to get away with doing it. It's funny how they still don't go for the millions of pounds of fraud that happened during COVID, one being the PPE. These things are never spoken about and never ever gone after. She says, thank you for your show. You're always fair and impartial and try to tell it from both sides. Thank you, Harmony. That's what I try to do. But Harmony, yeah, I agree. There's a lot of people, and I know people like you do, who will say, oh, they're all lazy, all feckless. And it really annoys me, because I just think you haven't thought for 1 second what it must be like if you're not lazy and feckless and you're being told that you are. Just awful. But you won't get it on this programme, as you know. Joe is in Derbyshire. Hello, Joe.
Hi, Joe. Hi, Joe. No, you're Petrie, aren't you?
I prefer the name Joe. I mean, if you want to call me Joe, I've been called worse in my time.
Call me anything, just not late for dinner.
So tell me your story, Joe.
Yeah, I've been disabled for 26 years, but I've been bedbound now for the last 4 years.
Oh, wow.
Because I was on something called a right care plan, where instead of having to go into hospital every time, they knew what drugs I needed, and I kept the drugs at home. The district nurse came and administered them for me, and which worked brilliantly until I had to move doctors, and they took me off them, and now I can't sit up for more than 15 minutes without vomiting.
Oh, God.
And we know what the problem is. They just won't give me what I need. And I still get phone calls even now from the DWP saying, you feeling up to going back to work yet? I changed my bank details a few weeks ago, and they literally insisted on coming out to my home, into my bedroom, and I live on my own, to check my ID, to change my bank details. And you can imagine...
That must have been scary.
But I've had sexual assaults in the past. It was terrifying.
Oh, darling, this is what really upsets me about the whole system, is that you've got people who are
we're not human.
I know.
To them.
Not to them. I know that there are people clearly swinging the lead, and then there are people like you, and everybody gets treated the same. It's just what Harmony was saying.
And it's coming. These cuts coming up. I'm terrified. The Joseph Rowntree Foundation say that it costs an average disabled household almost £1,000 a month more than an average per se normal household to live. Now, with universal credit, if your class is not being able to do any sort of work, then you get a premium of approximately £350 that goes on top of what you already get, and then your rent. So you get approximately £700 a month, which now with bills and everything it's absolutely nothing at all. And I don't know how to survive anymore.
Why haven't they signed you off, Joe?
I have signed off.
But then they shouldn't be bothering you. Why are they bothering you?
Because I'm on a sign-off of 10 years, and they are trying to get everyone they can back into work. And I live in quite a small market town where people are on quite high incomes, and I don't think they've got anyone else better to bother. Frankly.
Yeah, you're on some stupid checklist, aren't you?
Yeah.
I mean, but there has to be a point where you can appeal and say, you're causing me distress. Leave me alone. I cannot work. I've been signed off for 10 years. Leave me alone.
Oh, I have. My doctor's written to them telling me they're making me suicidal, but it doesn't make any difference. And
is there anybody that can advocate for you? Because this is unacceptable.
I know. Well, there are no advocates in my area at the moment. It's just how, like everyone else has been saying, that brown letter drops on the doormat, and you're just terrified. It's like, okay, we want your medical records as long as your arm, but we're not going to tell you that's what we want, because then hopefully you will just fill in the form, and if you only fill in the form, then we don't bother contacting anyone you've put on that form. And
I mean, this is supposed to be support for people. It's not supposed to be made more difficult or to try and trick you out of getting your money. I mean, it's disgusting.
But that's what it is. It's just vilification the whole way. And it's and now they're on about cutting things. I'm terrified.
And no one should live in fear. No one should live in fear of the state. And no one should live in fear of a state that is supposed to be there to protect you. I am horrified for you, Joe. And I will say again that if they do come after you, you give